Hello, listeners. You've bore with us. Mike, how do you say that properly? Born with us?
No, bared, I think, yeah.
Bared,
Yeah.
okay. There we go. Well, you've bared with us for 200 episodes of Random Encounter. We're here for episode 200. It's me, Greg Delmond, your usual host, and as usual these days, I am joined by Jono Logan, my lovely co-host.
Hello, all. Happy 200th.
And I realize I've been staring off in the middle distance. I should look at the camera because we're doing this one on camera. As you can see, you got me, you got Jono, and then over there, look at that, it's Mike Solosi.
Hey, I have my notes, my camera, and my audio recording in 3 different spots, so I'm going to be darting my eyes around like a chameleon.
Oh, wait, I really hope so. Is that what your superpower? Your eyes can go 2 different directions?
No, my superpower is mimicking animals, not imitating the physical characteristics of animals, I'm afraid.
That's true. You do a mean cricket amongst many things. But this isn't Rhythm Encounter. It's not animal themed. We're talking on Random Encounter, and we brought in, of course, our other host from the other podcast, Mike Solosi. And I guess Rhythm did just get going. We could have brought Mike, but he's too busy for us, unfortunately, the Sabato persuasion.
Yep,
so it's just the 3 of us.
Plus, when you bring in more than one mic into a situation, you really got to start getting into nickname territory. We did an episode of Rhythm once with 3 mics, and the other 2 were named Mac and Solosi. I was in an English class with 5 mics once, and poor Mike Sullivan became Sully in 5 seconds into the first period. So, yeah, when we mics are used to earning nicknames.
And then the fact that we're recording on mics, and anyways, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Who wants to do that? And we're already trying to figure out doing this on camera. So, hi, everybody. You can see us if you didn't already know what we looked like. This is us.
I apologize in advance.
An hour and a half. What was that, Jono?
No, I'm just laughing. Yep, this is what we look like.
We're sorry. Okay, I'm sorry for not being a beautiful Canadian actor, but 1 out of 3 ain't bad.
Well, I'm not clean shaven, so I'm pretty filthy looking too right now. But I'm over here on the West Coast, so it's nice and sunny for me, whereas you two have to deal with the darker Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah, the darkest has been thus far.
How's the weather going for you folks? It's been very rainy, although today, of course, it's nice and sunny, which means I have a very nice glow on me, and I'm probably very washed out.
It's been about 7 degrees today, I think. So not what I would call warm. But,
and then, so you're down stateside, so has it been warmer, colder, and we're moving in the fall?
Yeah, I'm in the mid-Atlantic East Coast, so it's pretty normal fall weather, just getting a little colder. Leaves are starting to change color. I mean, in other parts of the United States, the weather has been literally catastrophic. So, like my uncle in Colorado's, they have the largest fire in that area's history going on right now. The East Coast is doing okay. It's probably be a few months before the fires reach us.
Yeah, that's the hope, right? And then if by then it's wet and too wet for it to spread any further. Here's hoping.
You hope.
But yeah, exactly. But yeah, like I said, there's been 200 episodes of this whole Random Encounter thing, this podcast stream that I understand Rob Steinman was the head of back in 2010. I mean, I've been listening to it since its inception. Well, not since then. I went and did backlogging of the episodes, but I started at episode 1, worked my way all the way through. So where it started back on was it June 16th, I think, and where it is now. And then it wasn't until yourself, Slosi, you came in 2014, but you didn't jump right on Retro right then either, right?
Yeah, Retro Encounter didn't start until 2015. I was a music reviewer for about a year, and then I switched to podcasting. And I think Rob was hired to write reviews, but he, from very, very early on, wanted to podcast for the website. I think he started at Random Encounter less than a year after joining.
Gotcha.
And he
still did the odd one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but he was the main host of Random Encounter for I think 7 or 8 years. Before handing it off to Derek, who then handed it off to you.
Yes, very quickly.
Passing the torch.
Not expecting that. We back around, I want to say it was just before 150, I think, is when I hopped on. Because, again, Rob announced that he was retiring just from the site in general, just life, teaching. I think him and his wife, Jackie, were planning on going towards the kid direction as well at some point soon, so all that was kind of culminating, and this just didn't have a place in his life. So Derek was the natural selection, I guess, at that point, being as regular on the show as he was.
Careful.
And I saw a
Natural
niche.
selection can mean something very different in other contexts.
That's fair. The natural choice? Is that the better way to go? The obvious choice? I'm not sure. I don't know. I wasn't part of the politics, but I just saw a niche and I put myself out there. I've been wanting to give back to the site for ages, and I was like, I'll come on and join since I know Derek well enough, and worked my way in there. And then it wasn't until Derek got too busy for it too that he threw it at me, and I had to keep going somehow. So here we are. And Jono was helping me since I think it was April now. This whole year has been kind of a blur, but you've been official for a while. And then Solosi, when did you take over Retro? I don't know if you talked about that on your anniversary.
Sure.
On your anniversary episode or not.
Sure. Well, Retro Encounter, the first idea from it was by former staff member Josh Curry, and we started in May of 2015, and I was on a lot of early episodes, and in less than a year, I was sort of planning the podcast with him. And in 2016, we moved to a weekly format, and I became the head editor and producer. And then in 2017, Josh left the website to focus on his family because he was having a kid. I think he has a second kid now. And I took over the podcast fully in early 2017, and it's been I've been the lead host and lead producer ever since. But I don't host every episode. If people want to host for a particular idea, they're welcome to. And I host. I think I'm on something like 70% of all the episodes, and I host most of the ones I'm on. But it's a fairly democratic podcast within RPGFan.
The hardest working man in RPGs. Fan.
Yeah, it seems that way. You keep yourself busy, and
yes.
And you'd also over the pandemic started yourself another podcast because apparently one wasn't enough.
Yeah, I started the second podcast. You can find it on my social media accounts, and a bunch of RPG fan people have been on it. But I took a bit of a break during it when I had to focus on other things for a while. But yeah, I'm about 15 episodes deep on that one. I want to try and get to maybe 30 before retiring it. But I enjoy podcasting, and I was interested in podcasting on RPG Fan when I joined the music section. But and Retro Encounter, like sort of hopping on that bandwagon, since it was almost all recent hires that were starting that one, felt like the right opportunity. But I was a podcast listener before joining the site.
Yeah, and that's same with me, and it just seemed like the obvious way to give back when I was, again, saw a niche for myself. It's been 10 years, like you said, a decade, and we've gotten to episode 200. However, Solosi, you have definitely eclipsed Random Encounter with your aggressive workload.
Being weekly would exacerbate that. It's
yes.
I think the math checks out once a week versus once every 2 weeks. One's a higher rate than the other.
And then, of course, Rob definitely had plenty of hiatuses and delays. And again, I wasn't obviously working at the site to know what and when was going on. But I remember a lot of episodes of listening to and having Rob being like, sorry, it's been like a month since we've posted, or it's been about a month and a half or 2 months. Like, there's frequent delays. So I blame Rob. Rob's the
I think that he's not the only host that took a hiatus for his own wedding. Just saying.
Fair. That's fair. I did do that. And you got to take breaks once in a while. I mean, if we can get some more folks coming into swing in as extra hosts and do some more special episodes, I'll get more breaks. But in the meantime, I'd still try and do my best to get this out on a bi-weekly basis, just like, you're trying to get it out almost every Friday. And like you, I feel bad if I don't get it out on schedule.
Yeah, I have missed episodes or been very late with episodes sometimes, and every time I feel terrible, and trying to avoid feeling terrible is part of how I'm able to continue with the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's just trying to remind ourselves we are volunteers, and we're allowed to go, hey, I need my time. But yeah, I get it. You wanna do right by the folks that listen, because we wouldn't be at 200 episodes. Are you 214? Is that where you're at now?
Us? No, we're around 260.
260. Sorry. Wow, I'm way off. You're around 260. Either way, we wouldn't have this many episodes, and we wouldn't have Rhythm Encounter back without the enthusiasm of the fans. So that's why we wanted to do a bit of a special episode this year. This episode, whatever, to kind of mark the occasion.
This wonderful
love it or hate it, you have to see us, and if you want. Otherwise,
FYI,
you can just listen to it.
For anyone who's listening to this on their podcast player, they can watch the video at our YouTube channel.
Oh no, we're saving this video recording. Oh good. Okay. I'm not anxious now. I feel great.
We'll have to edit out all the embarrassing stuff, or it'll just be a still photo of Solosi. You are wearing a shirt, right?
Oh, of course I am. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Muffled clothes rustling, trying to
I'm
windy.
wearing a Castlevania shirt that has that says Castlevania in the Disney font with an outline of Dracula's castle. Yep,
I like it. What am I wearing today?
nice.
I've got Secret of Mana, the wolves in the ice fields. I can't know if I'm in my shot, but yeah, it's a really sweet Yeti one.
That's really nice. Sounds nice.
Right? Yeah, it's perfect colors. We don't see each other. We're just looking at you the whole time. So, part of this episode, I wanted to look back on episode 1 to kind of remember where the podcast came from. And it's largely stayed the same. We are definitely not as thirsty as Rob and his crew was in episode 1, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
right
it felt a little bit like Rob was trying to pimp out Dennis in episode 1.
Right?
It really did feel like Random After Dark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it kind of already started that way, and I'm not sure, I can't even remember because it's been ages since I've gone back and obviously listened from episode 1 on to where I finally joined the podcast, but it definitely, things were, I guess, a bit looser with Rob in terms of being all family friendly. And
we swear a lot less now.
We definitely do, and I just find the comedy of putting in a chocobo sound effect for a swear just too funny to not do, so... Yep. It also just happens to make our episodes sound less explicit, and then I also feel comfortable with my daughter listening to them if she ever wants to.
Yeah, see, this is what happens when you put a family man in charge of the podcast. You get chocobo sound effects.
Right, and nobody hates it, I hope.
And if they do, sorry.
But yeah, so 2010, we got this podcast going, and in that episode, which was... Because they had some test episodes, as I understand, and this was basically the first actual published episode. That's where they established the idea of talking about what games they were playing, whether it was review, whether it was new, and then trying to go into a topic that's come and gone out throughout the years. Jono helped reinvigorate that when he got back on. But yeah, let's, I guess, keep true to form for now and talk about what we were talking about.
Just want to kind of read, okay, so here is the description from the very first episode.
Ooh,
Over the years, RPGFan has tried to keep itself up with the times by adding new things, such as a Twitter account, or Facebook page, that's about it. So maybe we haven't been keeping up with the times. We have. Maybe we haven't been keeping up with the times as much as we'd like, but rejoice because today marks a big step in RPG fan history as we celebrate the launch of our first ever podcast, which we aptly named Random Encounter. Keep in mind, this could be considered a pilot, a test run, a trial, a beta version. You get the idea. And so on and so forth. So yeah, that's where we started out from. We were keeping up with the times and the cutting edge like Twitter and Facebook.
And also we've got an Instagram account, a Twitch account. We have our active YouTube finally as well. The site's come far over the past 10 years, and it has been around for 20.
We've also tripled or quadrupled the number of podcasts, and I think it was in the episode itself. Rob apologized for not having a podcast name or theme song yet, which they did get shortly after they recorded that. So it's it's still called Random Encounter 1, but they don't actually call it Random Encounter in the episode. And you could tell they were sort of basically mimicking the format of big gaming podcasts like Giant Bomb or 8-4-Play, where they're like, what we're playing segment, news segment, specific topic segment, and then sort of grand finale segment, but focusing on RPGs, of course, and hosting it with RPG fan staff. But it's again, it was definitely for people that were excited to podcast and talk about RPGs together, which is really the foundation of what Random Encounter is, and what drew me to it, because RPGs, even though they're wildly popular, are still, people that play a lot of RPGs is still a semi-niche community. So a podcast directed at that community was I think very effective. And Rob kept the thing going for 7 or 8 years, and that's not a joke.
That's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
It's I have a hard enough time keeping up with a bi-weekly schedule, and I've only been doing it now for a year and a half, more or less, on my own, and then bringing on Jono for the extra help. It's impressive that he was able to keep up with that long, with having that little in the way of hiatuses and delays. So good on him for creating this foundation. And yeah, it was a really big shock. I almost I obviously it wasn't a huge emotional thing, but just I was surprised when it was announced, hey, I'm leaving the podcast. And that's when, like I was saying, is when I got the idea to reach out to Derek and see if I could come on and help him co-host and such. But it was kind of like an end of an era.
And that's, I think, what makes something super long. I mean, it's the reason why, I don't know, Doctor Who, for example, has gone on for so long. There's eras, you transition to a new Doctor, new companions, that kind of thing. And as long as you keep passing the torch, you can let something continue and continue and continue without getting super stale.
I want my sonic screwdriver now. Come on.
I actually have some. Right. Here's my...
You would.
My River Song one. Yeah, I have a whole collection.
Ooh, let me extend this metaphor to, I don't know, the 45 seasons of Super Sentai, or the
Yep,
or the 30 seasons of Kamen Rider. But yeah, there's whenever there's something long running, you want to subdivide it somehow, and the Rob Steinman era is definitely the first big era of random encounter.
Yeah, it was the Dark Souls of random encounter. There's no other way to put it.
Does that make us Dark Souls 3 of random encounter?
I mean, maybe, but then that means that Derek was the bad one.
Or maybe Rob is the Demon Souls, then Derek is the Dark Souls, and now you're the bad one.
And now I'm the bad one.
I think that was one of the original bullet points in the random encounter drinking game. Someone mentions Dark Souls, take a drink.
Yeah, and we haven't really truly let it die. It definitely doesn't come up as much, and then Yakuza became the new thing for quite a while with when Jono started frequenting the episodes, because that basically was all he was playing and talking about.
Really? But, I thought the only thing I talked about was Abercrombie Video.
That was another one. Very niche to the Canadian audience, specifically the East Coast. But it was, we've had our own things, but Dark Souls is definitely a deep-rooted part of Random Encounters oeuvre. But, sticking with the theme and where it all kind of started, what have we been playing? What's been going on? Are you... Because, Mike, you came on, you were mostly doing music reviews. You do the odd video game review. You don't really do many of them these days now. You're mostly just playing stuff for retro. So what have you been keeping up on for giggles and poops?
Right.
Figure out a non-swearing way to say that.
What's great about this is we can't edit this because we're on camera, so giggles and poops is going to remain in there.
Yeah, I can lend you some SNK character voice words if you want to edit in something besides Chocobo Works or Quest.
I've got three. I got Moogles, are we more? I've got Kefka laughing.
Are we more of a Work crowd or more of a Queh crowd?
I'm kind of Queh.
We like Queh better. I could go either way.
I've always liked Work, and I think that's just because I started, with like Final Fantasy V.
All right,
was my first big Chocobo.
Yeah, we're at a stalemate. But anyway, back to what I'm playing. I guess I'm always playing something for Retro Encounter. I finished Phantasy Star 4 a few weeks ago. I am near the end of Finding Paradise, and we're recording an episode on that in a few days. And the game I'm supposed to be playing next is Final Fantasy X-2, but I haven't started that. I'm going to start that right after I'm done with Finding Paradise. So you can listen to all those dedicated Retro Encounter episodes when those come out to hear my thoughts on all of those. But the big game I've been playing... before I talk about that, I did finish Yakuza Kiwami last month.
Ooh, I
played that.
Take a drink.
I played that over September. I had a good time. It's not as good as Yakuza 0, but very few things are. So, Yakuza Kiwami, totally acceptable Yakuza game, but I would recommend 0 ahead of it. But yeah, the big game I've been playing recently is 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, which had a really
that looks so good.
It had a really sparkling review from Alana when it came out in mid-September, and I was already interested in it, but all the positive reviews really made me say, okay, yeah, I'm gonna buy this early, and I finally started playing it after I finished Phantasy Star 4, and it's really, really good.
Nice to hear. Yeah, I've been hearing really good things. It's like not quite you love it or you hate it, but just I think a lot of people are just surprised by how much they're loving it.
Yes and no. I think that Vanillaware is you love it or you hate it. That's the studio.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's the studio led by George Kamitami, who has very beautiful backgrounds and beautiful character art that also are sometimes weirdly sexualized and sort of grotesque. We don't need to. That's not a conversation we need to have.
Almost a Geiger thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like
almost more
Geiger?
like a Rubens thing than a Geiger thing, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
But that's the studio that did Odin Sphere, Muramos the Demon Blade, and Dragon's Crown, and so and probably other games that I'm forgetting. So this is the new game by that studio. They've been working on this game for something like 7 years, or at least 5 years. It was advertised at Atlas's booths at E3 in 2017 and 2018, but they didn't have anything besides a trailer and a poster. So I think this game was supposed to come out many years before it actually did. But when it came out in Japan in early 2020, it was getting, hey, this might be a masterpiece kind of buzz. And now playing it now, it's a lot of big ideas at once, but it's all really, really super cool. Like in the first 30 minutes, you get time travel between 3 different periods, strategy mecha battles against invading aliens. At least, I think it's 10 students are the main characters. I think I've only done prologue chapters for something like 6 or 7 of them. And it's a non-linear, multi-perspective visual novel story that already goes impressive places just minutes in, and I'm something like 3 or 4 hours in. And although I haven't gotten to a lot of meat of the game, and there's still a lot more game to play, and I should say it's basically like 80% visual novel, 20% RTS mecha game. But it's extremely impressive. The art is beautiful, the presentation's beautiful, the dialogue's good. It's
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's too early to say this is one of my favorites of the year, but it's on the road to doing that. This game is excellent. Read Alana's review on the main site, and it comes recommended from me at a very early position so far.
I think based on the feedback, it's probably going to end up on a couple of people's top 10 for 2020.
Oh, I don't know if I've played 10. I haven't played 10 new games in 2020, but this game is really, really good, and it's the most I've ever liked a Vanillaware game, because I couldn't even finish Odin Sphere. It got really repetitive in at least the PS2 version in some of the middle chapters where I stopped. But this game is excellent, and even just the way they do adventure game stuff, like whenever you meet a new person or hear about something, it becomes a concept, sort of in your brain, and then when you talk to other people, you can say a concept to them, like ask them about this character or ask them about this event. Like sort of like concepts in your mind are almost like items that you would throw that you would throw at the screen in a traditional adventure game.
Yeah, instead of rubbing 2 objects together, you're rubbing your thoughts against somebody else.
Yeah, basically. And there's
God.
And there's weird rubbing in this game. Every main character has a chip implanted in them that allows them to summon their giant mecha. And I haven't gotten far enough to be certain about this, but I think the mecha were invented in a kid in the 2000s. Then he went back in time in the 1940s so Japan could start building them. And then when the aliens invade in the 80s, the mecha are ready to be summoned. It's like that's the kind of weird time travel weirdness we're going with. And
that sounds pretty rad, though.
I'm not even sure that's how it is. Again, I don't totally understand everything going on yet, but it's extremely rad. If you like Showa era kaiju movies, things like 1970s Kamen Rider or 1960s Ultraman or 1950s Godzilla, like it's a little bit of all of that. You could a lot of it is set in the 80s, so you can see like the sort of the drab black uniforms and school and like they're trying to, and schools that are in disrepair that are half being rebuilt. It's like a very specific era of Japanese school kids that I'm sure is very meaningful to people that grew up in that era or know that era. It's there's a little bit of Yakuza 0 in this, Jono.
Ooh. Well, and I feel like it hits also, like, even for North America, which might be catching some people, like the Stranger Things crowd too, for that whole nostalgia trip of it as well.
It's it's a bit of a
Power Rangers.
Sure. Power
Mine's
Rangers
a transformation, but yeah.
There's not a transformation, but there are dramatic mecha summonings, which are which is their own, not exactly a Kamen Rider going Henshin, but it's again like special effects shows and kaiju shows of a certain time is, I think, what evokes the most for me. But it's which is
definitely your wheelhouse.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of influences going into this. The art is beautiful. Like, if anything, I think that the battles are more a means to an end rather than a really compelling part of the game. But and for a while, the kids think that these battles are dreams, but it becomes clear that it's more than just dreams happening. It's again, I'm rambling and not painting a brilliant picture of what this game is, but read or watch our review on it and just marvel at how beautiful the art is. It's really, really good so far.
It's a pretty looking game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like I was one who edited the video for Alana's review for our YouTube channel, and yeah, I was just sucked right into how gorgeous that game looked, and that alone is enough to bring me in, and just like how unique the sort of like tower defensiness of the battles was as well. Looked really neat. It's like a weird tower defense mixed with the front mission kind of vibe to me from just on the outside looking at it.
Yeah, it's a little bit RTS, a little bit tower defense. eventually you get to gameplay where like students get exhausted if they fight 2 days in a row and they have to take a break. So you have to sort of rotate your pilots in and out. And the robots or the mecha that you pilot are of different generations of when they were built, so they have sort of different key features between each one. And there is some complicated mecha customization, but really it's about this story. And like the Vanillaware games I've played or at least sampled have always been beautiful but weird and never totally jived with me. And this one is like just 30 minutes in, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna play this at least for many more hours, because it's like nice. for the first time, this is a Vanillaware game with really good storytelling.
Yeah, it helps that it really hits a lot of the things you love. It sounds.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just an interesting narrative and sort of like a specific kind of era of Japan that makes me feel like a virtual tourist to a degree. And I don't love school anime kind of stuff, but I have played every Persona game, so I guess maybe I was lying 5 seconds ago.
Maybe you do.
Yeah. But like this game it checks a lot of my boxes, and I really encourage people trying it. Just don't go in it expecting a pure mecha combat game. This is a visual novel with some mecha battles in it, but and like you can see the influences from 80s monster movies to Neon Genesis Evangelion. There's a lot of tradition behind this that you can feel even if you don't totally know it. Like a few of the main characters really love those old monster movies and even reference some fictional ones.
Neat. It was throwing me back to vibes of because I haven't played it obviously, but I have played Always Sometime Monsters. And just like that kind of the mecha battles, the common or kaiju battles are kind of like something in the background, and it kind of gave me that vibe. Anyways, just like this is what's actually happening. Anyways, it was very neat. Just there's a certain like hit of nostalgia yeah, like you said, it's narrow focused on the presentation of what is going on in this time period, but with some of the batshit cuckoo-ness of the time travel-y stuff.
Yeah, there's a recent anime from a year or two ago called SSSS Gridman, which is based on a tokusatsu show from the 90s, whose American adaptation had Tim Curry in it, but that's neither here nor there.
But we'll take it.
Yeah, but like it reminded me of that a little bit, because this is a human story about Japanese teenagers with these giant kaiju battles being sort of dramatic payoffs in the story, but not really the whole story.
I dig it.
Yeah. Hey, speaking about, I mean, it's still random encounter, so we have to go off on random tangents occasionally. Sosi, have you read the new Ultraman comic that came out from Marvel?
I have not. I did see the recent Netflix adaptation Ultraman anime series. And I've seen a couple of the 2000s Ultraman shows, and I have DVDs of one of the 1960s Ultraman shows, but I have not read the recent comic.
Yeah, the comic just came out I think last month, actually. The Rise of Ultraman. It's Marvel, but cool. They're doing something similar to what they did with the recent Power Rangers comic, which is they're retelling the origin. But all the same characters are there. All the characters are there from the original Ultraman, but they're putting it in modern day context. And apparently, it's really good.
I bet it is good. I mean, Ultraman's been around forever. It's Toho, the same company that makes Godzilla and Mothra and some other kaiju movies of that era.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, but the oeuvre of tokusatsu shows I'm more familiar with is Toei, which is Kamen Rider and Super Sentai. And do you know about Marvel's complicated history with them?
No,
I don't think so.
Well, okay, buckle up a little bit.
Here we go.
All right. Kamen Rider created in 1971, Super Sentai created in 1975, but gets canceled after 2 seasons. Then Toei makes a partnership with Marvel, and they make a Spider-Man tokusatsu series.
The Spider-Man series.
Yes, yeah, the live action Spider-Man, which I think is 77 or 78. And
the Emissary from Hell.
Yep, Emissary from Hell. He has a giant robot named Leopardon, and And Toei.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's crazy. It ran for about a year, maybe longer, but it was successful. And Toei was interested in doing a longer partnership with Marvel. So they're like, hey, we have this Super Sentai thing that we canceled 2 years ago. How about we bring it back, but with Marvel characters? And Marvel at first was yes, but then during production they canceled. So the third season of Super Sentai is this weird different countries thing. It was called Battle Fever, and it was led by a guy named Battle Japan. And the intention was it was going to have a Captain America crossover. There was almost a Captain America live action Japanese show, probably around 1979 or 1980, that never happened. So they did this show that was intended to have Captain America in it, but with no Captain America. And then Toei decides, well, this show did well in the ratings, so let's continue it anyway. And since then, since 1979, there has been a new season of Super Sentai every single year on Japanese television. And it was the 16th season of Super Sentai that was themed around dinosaurs that became the first season of Power Rangers.
All right.
But
Which
so
then
yeah,
became the very awkward. That gave them the very awkward problem of having to figure out how to fit future seasons of it into the Power Rangers mold.
oh yeah, it got really weird. Like the season after the dinosaur season was about Chinese mythology, but they couldn't figure that out, and they wanted to keep the dinosaur suits, so they just said, "Oh, they have new Zords now. They're called the Thunder Zords, and there's a white tiger." So it got weird how like them trying to fit Japanese archival footage into new seasons of Power Rangers. But they've continued going. They've continued it.
It matched surprisingly well.
Yeah,
too.
it's still going.
I didn't even know as a kid.
I know it's still ongoing because there was a there's always commentary online over what seasons they skip and what they keep or don't keep out of different seasons. But both Super Sentai and Power Rangers are going strong, and the I had a point with this. Oh yeah, none of it would have happened, either the rebirth of Ultraman or the continuation of Super Sentai, without Marvel's involvement.
Yeah, the Japanese Spider-Man has gotten a bit of a revival in the last few years. He was featured in a crossover called Into the Spider-Verse, where his robot was a key part of defeating the bad guy. And it's very funny to watch a variety of Peter Parkers trying to figure out, why are you dressed as me and why do you have a giant robot?
Yeah, Leopardon was in. I think that was just the post-credit stinger, where they like Spider-Man 3000 or whatever has the Leopardon robot. It's different from the anime Spider-Girl in the bulk of the movie, but that movie's incredible. It's
a brilliant film.
Yeah, it's like visually it does things with textures, like having different parts of the foreground and background at different frame rates to make it look like you're reading a moving comic. It's amazing.
Yeah,
we just watched it not too long ago and it was so good. And then speaking of that, where I feel like I guess it wasn't really you, but it was misconstrued because I think you brought up Spider-Man recently in our Slack, and then it was being thought that, are we trying to make it a pitch for Spider-Man to be in there, which I know Jono would love to have. Yeah,
we were talking about some materials for Spider-Man Miles Morales, which comes out soon.
Right.
And I made a comment that the original one is basically an RPG, which people didn't agree with, and we didn't cover it when it came out in 2018. Amazingly, it had the same. I think it came out just a few days within the North American release date of Dragon Quest XI, which again was a time I remember very clearly.
Which we did cover.
Yes. But what Spider-Man it's an open world game with a lot of exploration elements, a lot of equipment customization, and an experience system and a skill tree system. Which my argument was, we cover games like modern Assassin's Creed and modern Yakuza that have these things. Why not Spider-Man? I was saying it mostly facetiously. I knew we weren't going to cover it, but that was a discussion that we had, and I think that, and to tie this back to to Random Encounter episode 1, at one point Rob mentions that he's playing Warhammer 40k Dawn of War 2, which is a sort of a squad-based RTS that Rob passionately says is an RPG worth covering, and then later in the episode they mentioned that. So that more and more non-RPGs or genres that aren't RPGs are taking on RPG elements or even becoming RPGs, and using with the sort of main examples being Borderlands and Mass Effect.
Yeah, that was the big conversation section.
Yeah, in the second half of the second half of the podcast, they break that up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about that. It's interesting that you brought up Spider-Man, because I wanted to talk to you about that, because in a way I agree with you, but in another way I don't. So we'll talk about that in the second half.
Sure. Like I think it's probably safest to call Spider-Man, again 2018 PS4 Spider-Man, an open world action game. but it has a lot of RPG elements in it that I think if you take a very broad definition of what an RPG is, it easily falls in that box. But I don't feel passionate enough about it to demand. I don't feel passionate enough to demand we cover it.
Yes. Oh, I know. No, that's fair. We don't have an argument, but we'll talk about it because it's a great example of the topic.
Exactly. But rolling back to what are we playing currently? So yeah, the 13 Sentinels sounds rad.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm liking the look of it. And Phantasy Star 4, that was your first Phantasy Star, which I'm sure you talked about on Retro.
Yeah, we talked about that on Retro for 2 episodes. It was my first Phantasy Star, the first Sega game the first single player Sega game that I've ever beaten, because I was never a Sega kid.
Right.
Well, okay. That's a lie. I've beaten a couple Dreamcast games, but that was the first Genesis game that I ever beat that was not a multiplayer fighter. Yeah.
That's fair.
The big Sega console.
Mm-hmm. And Jono, last episode we had you on, of course, as I often do, and you hadn't really played much of anything RPG-wise. Have you been able to dive into some review projects lately or something else, or are you still diving into Spelunky 2 constantly?
Oh, I'm still diving into Spelunky 2 like daily. It's so freaking good. But I have actually done a few other things. The one that's on the site right now is Streets of Kamurocho. So this is really cool. It's Sega's 60th anniversary. And in honor of their anniversary, they were releasing a bunch of like little bite-sized games on Steam. One of them, which caused a lot of controversy online, called Golden Axed, which was a canceled.
Oh yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah,
that was hilarious marketing.
Yeah, that wasn't even a canceled game. It was a demo that executives demanded within 2 weeks, and then they sort of canceled it and shelved it, and then brought it up without the input of the original creators. That was a messed up story. But Streets of Kamurocho was developed in a better spirit.
Yes, it was. It was developed in a spirit of, I guess, celebration of 2 of Sega's most enduring and popular franchises, which is Yakuza and Streets of Rage. So what the game is, it's free. It was free to download. It's not anymore because it's the 19th, and this is going to be airing considerably after that. It's a reskin of Streets of Rage 2's first level, but using Kiryu and Majima in place of the other characters, and the entire level is reskinned. It's Kamurocho, so it's a 16-bit version. They have a 16-bit version of the battle theme from it. It looks just like if Yakuza was on the Sega Genesis. If the first Yakuza was on Sega Genesis, that's what this would be. Mm-hmm. And it was free to download. I downloaded it. It is in no way, shape, or form an RPG. But
I was going to say, is it? But it covers our adjacent policy.
It's adjacent, and it's kind of the same thing as we covered, like Circle of the Moon, because it's bloodstained. Yeah. But that's a traditional Castlevania game.
No, you mean Curse of the Moon. Circle of the Moon is
of course it is a Castlevania game. Yeah,
Circle of the Moon is a Castlevania game. Curse of the Moon is a non-RPG bloodstained adjacent game.
Yes, and it's basically a Castlevania game for NES. But this is, there are no RPG elements in it, and it's pretty limited. I'm not gonna lie. I gave it a good review. I gave it an 80 because it's free. It's 20 minutes, and if you like Streets of Rage or Yakuza, you'll have a really, really good time with it because you get to see like tons of references throughout. It gives it a new skin, and frankly speaking, it played as a concept, as a demo almost for an actual 16-bit Yakuza game. And while I was playing it, I was like, wow, this fits really well. I mean, of course it fits really well because Yakuza was born out of that tradition. But it was
River City Ransom kind of naturally evolved into Yakuza. I feel like it's kind of the same vibe of the beat 'em up, bit of RPG elements. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I was playing it and I was just thinking, wow, if they took some of the RPG elements that was featured in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, for example, and they put it into this, and they used a very similar template as the Streets of Rage 2 specifically, I think they could have a real retro hit here.
This is almost the version we would see if, again, like you would see the console version, which would be the Yakuza series, and then this would be like the Game Gear version or the Game Boy version.
Yeah, it's a really, really good demake. And the mechanics are really, really strong because it's Streets of Rage 2, so it doesn't feel like a fly-by-night. It controls well. It controls exactly like the original. So Sega released it as a limited time. You can download it for 2 days, and that's it. We're taking it off Steam. I have a suspicion that's not going to be forever, because it was a lot of fun, and again, I feel like it was a proof of concept, and I think that it could be spun off into a full-length game. Whether or not it will be is another question, but holy crap, it was a fun time. I sat down with my girlfriend. She does not play beat-em-ups at all, and she died within the first 30 seconds, and then she was like, let's reset and try that again, and then she was great at it.
That's good.
Yeah, and we played it for 20 minutes and got through the first level, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, I can't wait to see what happens next. And then the beginning of the level popped up again with round 2 under it, and I was like, oh, it's just the first level. But yeah, that was a bit of a bummer. But as it was, it's free. I could not possibly complain about it. If it was terrible, I just wouldn't have reviewed it. But I played it and I was like, you know what, this is worthy of a little mention, especially considering that Yakuza 7 is coming out in about 3 weeks? Little under a month.
As of this recording, yeah.
As of this recording, so it's going to be it was a nice little taste for that. It got you in the mood.
Yeah, I doubt this would be made into a full game, but it's the kind of thing that you could see them include in a package of a bunch of other SEGA games. They're not just going to let it die forever after a 2-day release window. But
or you go into the arcade in a future Kiwami Yakuza game, and you can play this.
Yeah, exactly.
At the arcade.
Yeah, I mean, there was 4 80s arcade games in Yakuza 0, and I think in several Yakuza games, there's just I think it's in 6 and 7. There's just full Virtua Fighter 5, like a full PS3 game inside a PS4 game. Mm-hmm. So this being in a Yakuza Future Arcade is also a likely destination, I think. I don't think it's gone forever, but it was a very cool moment for SEGA to do that on a big anniversary year.
I agree with you, though. I think that would be a perfect place for it, because, I mean, in Judgment, they did Kamuro of the Dead, which was a on-rails remake of Yakuza Dead Souls, and it was a full style, if you had a light gun, it would have been perfect for it. So yeah, I could see them putting it in again and just being this is based on the legendary tale of the Dragon of Dojima.
Yeah, they adapted Yakuza Dead Souls into a House of the Dead rails shooter. Mm-hmm.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think this is going to lie dead. I think it's just too cool an idea, and it's a nice little piece of work. They'll put it in something else. So that wasn't an RPG. The RPG I've been playing lately is an oldie but a goodie, Divinity Original Sin.
Oh, nice. I've always been curious about that one, because Steve Meyerink always spoke super high of it.
Yeah, Amanda, at the beginning of the pandemic, she started getting really into D&D, playing D&D online with her friends. And she was playing two RPGs on Zoom. And they went on break a few weeks ago for a number of reasons, but she hasn't been able to play them. So I was like, hey, you know what we could do? This game features co-op, so why don't you go on the couch and I'll go on my computer, and we can just yell at each other from across the condo and play this RPG together that's based on it's not based on Dragon Quest, but it uses the D20 system, or a variation upon it anyway.
Dungeons and Dragons, you mean?
Yeah. So what did I say?
You said Dragon Quest. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's nothing like Dragon Quest.
Yeah. Yakuza 7. Yakuza 7, a little bit like Dragon Quest. Divinity and Original Sin, considerably less like Dragon Quest.
Yes, it's not it is not like a dragon. But yeah, so we've been playing through that. We are not tremendously far in it. We've been playing it hour a night or so, and we've just left the town. We've completed all the mini quests in the first town. And we're having a real blast with it. It's fun. It's a genuine role-playing game. You create your characters. You can talk between your characters. You can choose which, the dialogue options. If you have a disagreement, it goes into this little rock, paper, scissors mini game to see who wins and which choice you make.
If the two of you disagree on a specific choice in a conversation chain kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. So if it's cool. I want to dig up this grave, and the other person doesn't want to dig up this grave, you can have a rock, paper, scissors session to determine whether you dig up this grave. Yeah, and it's great. I mean, it still looks good. It doesn't look brilliant, because it is a 8-year-old game at this point. I think it came out in 2012.
Yeah, it's getting up there, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very, very good. What I've heard about the series is that Original Sin is a great RPG. Original Sin 2 is one of the greatest RPGs ever made. So I'm going to be excited to get to that eventually, but as of now, we're just playing it for an hour and 2 hours a night. She plays it on her computer, I play it on mine, and we just yell at each other to figure out what to do. And we're having a really great time. That might be something I'd be
interested in checking out with you as well. I played Divinity Original Sin 2 at PAX 2018, I want to say.
Yes.
I want to say it was when I played it, but with Annette, we tried it out, but it wasn't for her. She kept finding she wanted it mechanically to be a lot more like Warcraft, and it kept throwing her off that it wasn't. And so because that was where her experience with a lot of that stuff came from at that point, was with World of Warcraft. And she was like, it's not handling the same. I can't get it. I don't like the way the viewpoints control. I'm out. I was like, oh, darn, because it would have been fun to play with.
I can relate with that because years and years and years ago when the first time I played that kind of RPG, I was playing it and I was like, wow, this looks just like Diablo. And it's not. But
it handles. I think I was more used to it because like it handles like Dungeon Siege, which I had gone through. Dungeon Siege 2 actually is when I started on, and so I guess I'd gotten used to it. But yeah, it's almost, I was expecting, I guess, to play more like Diablo or like isometric, like Baldur's Gate and such, and then finding the freedom of movement around the character. I could see how it could throw things off a bit, and I don't know.
Well, I'm super excited because this is a genre that I've been wanting to get into for a few years now, and it turns out the push I needed to get into it was playing it with my partner. So yeah, we have Divinity Original Sin 1, we have Original Sin 2, and even though they're not co-op, we could still technically play a number of others, a couple of others, like Baldur's Gate 3 comes out, or I guess it's in early access already now. So that might be a possibility.
By the same developer.
Yeah. So it's gonna.
And yeah, there's Torchlight. You can do 2-player as well, and it's slightly different, but still kind of the same.
Well, okay. Torchlight 3 just came out, but Torchlight 2 and 3 are definitely more like Diablo, while while Original Sin 1 and 2 are definitely more like old Infinity Engine games. But
yeah, you're right.
Jono, maybe this is more true of Original Sin 2 than 1, but one thing I heard a lot about the co-op in that game was the interactive systems. Like let's say you're both playing mage characters. One character can, cast a water spell, the other one can cast a lightning spell, and then it will vary in a connected way, electrocute where the two spells meet. And there's like dozens of examples of combat and action interactivity like that. And again, maybe this is more true of DS2 than DS1, but are you
sounds a lot better than the way they tried to do that in Crystal Chronicles, that's for sure.
Yeah, I believe it. But have you gotten any like interesting gameplay combos with your characters like that?
Yeah, actually, we picked a fight with some orcs, which they were way out of our level, and there were 5 of them.
As one does.
Yeah, we were me and her are level 3, and we have a companion who's level 3 as well, and she can summon a spider. But they were all level 5 and 6. And we were like, why don't we really plan this out and figure out what's going on? So we examined the area, and there were a couple of oil barrels around. And I have a teleportation spell. So I took the oil barrel, and I dumped it, and it broke open and covered a lot of them in oil. And then Amanda shot a fire arrow at them and set them all on fire.
Yep, sounds about right.
Yep.
And the spider charged into the fire.
Actually, yeah, the spider did charge into the fire. And we're like, oh, so stupid. But yeah, so we won the battle, and we were like, this is awesome, and we feel invincible. And then we went to pick another battle and got our asses handed to us in like 5 minutes. No. So, yeah, if you are smart about it, a lot like Dungeons & Dragons, you can kind of come up with plans and unconventional ways of winning fights that you really shouldn't be able to.
But can be rewarded for your ingenuity.
Yeah, I mean, we got a ton of experience from it.
Nice.
And some good items. So yeah, we're gonna.
Stephen always loved talking about that. It's possibly where you were hearing that from as well. So we'll see.
I believe. Well, I mean, I've heard about it on several other podcasts, and
Gotcha.
I just read a lot of game news stuff in general. But Stephen has been very vocal about how much he loves both of those, and I think he also played with his wife, similar to how you're playing with your girlfriend, Jono.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I'm really enjoying it. I mean, it is a bit of an old game, but it doesn't feel old. I mean, it's a good RPG is a good RPG, and the mechanics don't feel dated or anything like that. The interaction systems for fighting is great.
Well, it's not that old. It came out less than 5 years ago.
Did it? I thought it came out in like 2013 or 2014.
I remember it was a big Kickstarter thing. It was one of the earlier like huge Kickstarter revivals back in the day.
2014.
Being a big deal. 2014. Okay.
2014. Yeah. So it was announced in 2012 and then came out in 2014. Oh wait, no, sorry, it was announced in 2013, and it was Kickstarter, and they raised, they raised almost $950,000 with other donations from other sources, bringing it to over $1 million of the game's final budget of 4 million euros.
Yeah, 2013's really Kickstarter heyday, and they were basically pitching it as a D&D inspired game from the makers of Divine Divinity and sort of the previous Divinity games. But this is definitely a crowdfunding success story.
Yeah, and it spun off into, this is a great game, but then in 2018 it spun off into one of the apparently best RPGs of all time, which is Original Sin 2. And I haven't played it, so I can't definitively say that, but I will at some point.
But can you definitively say that?
I can definitively say that. We'll see what happens in 2021.
Episode 200 is going to be my last.
Oh, no, with this kind of material, we can easily get to 400. Just keep churning out the puns.
It's okay, Mike. We like good hosts, so you're always welcome. I do remember, too, that Steven was always trying to get Rob to play it as well, and I can't remember if he ever actually succeeded, though. I feel like he did, but Rob bounced off it. I cannot remember.
I think that's about right. I think he did get Rob to play it, and Rob liked it, but then got frustrated with some unbalanced enemies and gave up. And Steven called him a wuss because Steven plays every game on the highest difficulty.
Yes, he does.
And then he gets mad when a game is too hard, and I'm like, Steven, why are you doing this to yourself? And that we've had that circular conversation at MagFest before.
No doubt.
What for myself, you were asking.
Yeah, I have been. I wrapped up things on Star Renegades, which I talked about last episode. And then I've picked up Torchlight 3 for review, considering you just brought it up, Mike. It is still very much like Diablo inspired, but also this one feels like a simpler version in a lot of ways, which took me off guard, which I kind of like, because obviously they needed to shake things up in some ways, so it wasn't just being Torchlight 1, Torchlight 2, which was just a clone of Diablo 2. I haven't played Diablo 3, so I don't know if Torchlight 3 is in any way, shape, or form similar to Diablo 3. But
doesn't sound like it.
No, not really. Similar as to how all games in that genre are similar, but no,
right.
It's not like Diablo 3.
Yeah, mechanically the foundations don't seem the same. It's still very much Torchlight. You have your 4 classes you can pick off the top, and they have their own skill trees and everything. And at that point, that's where the customization aspect of the classes themselves mostly ends. Aside from that, any sort of finagling you can do with stats and abilities comes from growing your skill tree as you level up and the equipment you find. So it's still very much a loot hack with you just trying to find the best gear and just one more monster raid and hoping you get the next best thing to make your character stand out that much more amongst the rest. But it's you don't have the ability point assignment or anything like you used to have in Torchlight 2 and in Diablo 2 and such. Your character just levels up and does its thing and grows exponentially, and then you get to modify where you want to put your skill points, and that's basically it when it comes to customizing in that regard. But they did add a lot more pets. So you have 3 new choices. You still can have a very good boy, and you can also have a very good owl, and you can have a very good John Tucker, which is I named my alpaca Tucker because I just could not.
Aww.
Because John Tucker goes and visits an alpaca farm very often. For those who don't know on the podcast,
have you told him yet?
I haven't mentioned it to him yet. No, I was going to show him a screenshot at some point. My alpaca named Tucker. I figure he'll be very amused by it.
You should include it in the show notes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I probably will. Yeah, that's a good idea. And then you can unlock new pets, though, which is the new thing that's really nice. Because in the original one, you could feed them food that would kind of change them into monsters. Or not the original. I can't remember if that was in the first one. But Torchlight 2 is the one I spent the most time with.
It's in
fish.
Yeah, it's in both of them, but it's way more expanded in Torchlight 2.
Gotcha. Thank you. And you can... Yeah, they'll change into monsters. This one, I haven't run into that yet, where you can feed them anything. But you can unlock new pets through certain boss encounters and such. You'll free a pet, or you'll find some... They can be a random drop or something you can find. And then you have the option eventually that you can swap your pets out. So as you find new pets and such, you learn, I think, I haven't confirmed because I haven't played it a ton yet, but it seems like when you find a new pet, it comes with a new skill that all your pets then automatically know. And then basically you can just swap them out to change the skin of the pet. It doesn't seem to affect their stats or anything. So it's kind of nice that if you're bored of the pet that you have, then you can swap out. I mean, in Torchlight 2, I had a ferret because what else are you supposed to choose? And
the bulldog, obviously.
The whole time. Pardon?
The bulldog, obviously.
That's fair. That's a very good competitor, actually. And in this one, yeah, you just have the retriever, the owl, and the alpaca, which I would have been fine if I was stuck with an alpaca for the rest of the game. But it is kind of nice to know that I can swap over to like a little like impish demon or some other creature that I find along the way.
But yeah, it sounds like that the pet form is a aesthetic choice in Torchlight 3. While in Torchlight 2, you couldn't freely switch them around unless you permanently transformed them or temporarily transformed them by feeding them fish. But that's cool. I thought the classes at least looked neat in Torchlight 3. I've watched some videos and read some articles, but I haven't played it yet. And I was a huge fan of the first two, so I'm at least interested in this one a little bit. But it had a weird, troubled development history. It was going to be an MMO called Torchlight Frontier. Then Runic Games.
Okay, that didn't just get thrown out.
Yeah, then Runic Games, the studio that made Torchlight 1 and 2 and another exploration game called Hob, broke apart and folded in either late 2019 or early 2020. So, Perfect World, the Chinese conglomerate that ran Runic Games, like basically got a new team together with some former Runic people to finish Torchlight 3 and make it a standalone co-op RPG instead of an MMO. So, like, all of that was really troubling, and its alpha and beta periods were not really they didn't run very well, but this final version appears to run better than the beta, but is maybe and at least has some fun gameplay ideas, but I don't know if it's as special as Torchlight 2 felt 7 years ago.
It doesn't. Yeah, It's definitely lacking some amount of the magic, and maybe that is just like the lack of customization, the lack of making the characters your own. Because like I had in Torchlight 2, I went through it as the hammer users, the big the guys who
engineer
wrenches and the guns.
Yep, that's the engineer class. They had big smashy attacks, some robot attacks, and some shield and cannon stuff. Yeah, that's probably my favorite class.
It was a lot of fun, and I definitely went more smashy route with a few little like side helper bots because just like in Diablo 2 and Diablo 1, more so I guess Diablo 2, which has kind of really laid that foundation, and Torchlight 1 and 2 aped on. You could really have a very dynamically different approach to your class depending on which skill trees you decide to go in.
You're a maniac if you do an engineer with no heal bot, because that heal bot is crucial for every single engineer build I can possibly think of. It's like, why wouldn't I put 15 points into a heal bot? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's definitely in there. And they have what are they called? Rail something, I can't remember what they're called, but they kind of have like an engineer-esque
Railmaster in this one again. It's called Railmaster, and it is a lot like an engineer, but they also
weird
can,
like summon train or something.
You summon a train and like continuously lay track for the train to go down, and you can put the turrets on the train and have a shield go around the train. It's interesting, but
it seems like a really neat gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It seems like a really neat gimmicky class. I haven't played that one because I want to do something much more different. And then there was the one where you are straight up just a robot.
That's called. It's either a forge or forged, but it's a robot that you just attach a bunch of weapons to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's your hack and slasher. The ones I have tried was the sharpshooter, I believe is the other one.
Yep.
And I'm liking that one. That's kind of my main. And then I did a bit of a run as the
Dusk Mage.
Dusk Mage, thank you. I was like, it's a time of day mage. I can't think of it's a Del Mage now. Yeah, the Dusk Mage, which is neat. I like its inherent like weapon that it has, where it's like this big giant like attachment arm thing that it gets, made out of various materials, but it attacks with this big like sweeping magical claw attack. So it's really neat to kind of do this neat splash damage melee thing, but still kind of keep you a bit out of reach as a mage. So I like that aspect. And the sort of yin yang aspect of you have like your light spells and your dark spells, and as you cast them both, it charges, and then when they finally meet in the middle, you kind of get this like period of sort of like Super Saiyanism, where everything's kind of amplified a bit for you for a while, and then it recedes, and then you recharge it by casting spells from either side, kind of thing.
Yeah, so it reminds me. It reminds me of Final Fantasy XIV Red Mage, where like I think in Torchlight 3, the Dusk Mage has the shadow attacks are more melee and more area of effect, while the light attacks are more range and more like single target. But if you keep a balance of light and dark, you sort of build up a meter that lets you do something really kick-ass, which is kind of like the FF14 Red Mage. But
that's cool. I like that.
But those two games are different vibes.
Sure are. But that's a really cool approach to that class, because I don't know near as much about 14 as you do, but Red Mages have always been fascinating to me since FF1. So I like that direction that they took with that.
They have a neat hat.
They do. they had and some very, very stylish taunts where you can even pop your collar at an enemy. It's FF14. It's its own weird thing.
And then the sharpshooter, instead of having mana for a lot of their abilities, they have ammunition, and which is cool because even if you aren't equipping a bow, you can still use those abilities. Because I was kind of worried. I was like, my pigeonhole, I can only use a bow if I want to, because I found like a really good pistol that was better than my bow. And it doesn't just convert to being like, instead of using arrows, you use the pistol. It just magically swaps in a bow for you. So that's fine. It doesn't mean that you can't also be a sword swinging sharpshooter if you wanted. So that's kind of neat. Like they give the characters a lot of flexibility within their class in terms of like, you want to be a sword boy with your Dusk Mage, then go do that. You don't have to use their totems and their claws and stuff. You can do whatever you want and still cast the magic spells, and that's just fine. And the same thing as the sharpshooter, and presumably for the others. But like I said, that's basically where the customization of the classes ends. Is you got 3 different skill windows. 2 of them are for the class themselves, and then one of them is you choose one of 4 relics that you kind of put points into and unlock, and they will just, again, give you different abilities. Like one's a bunch of like poisonous centric stuff, and you can summon these poisonous spiders and ghostly like little goblins and stuff like that, and more of a minion kind of generation thing. And then one of them is, it's like a blood chalice thing or something, where you basically regain health for using those abilities and damaging people, and stuff like that. And then there's also this, I can't remember the last thing is. There's like this epic tier thing that unlocks I can't remember if it's level centric. Don't have my notes, but you get these unlocks as well that will give you a permanent perk bonus that you can pick to be like, you move faster when you use certain types of these skills, or you'll get more gold from enemies, but they unlock at certain milestones. So all that's kind of neat. In terms of character development. But then the other thing they added in this one after the initial first few quests is you get a fort that you can customize. So it becomes kind of roguelike-ish. Not so much that like you're always dying and coming back to this spot, but you have your fort that you can build up to add more benefits to you. So you can collect resources and such in the map that will help you build different different buildings and upgrades. And then you can also like smelt things to make different stuff if you built the smelter, and refine different minerals and materials and such. So they have this whole kind of like sort of light crafting system, and it's pretty robust, like how much you can customize the fort, because it comes as is, but you can tear everything out and just completely remodel it as you want. So to make it your own. I haven't done much of that myself, but that's also where you can build like your little pet house. You can swap out your pets. There's these statues that you can build if you unlock them to get different wardrobe for your character classes and stuff. So that's kind of neat. I'm looking forward to exploring that a lot more.
I wonder how in depth it is, because I know that a lot of people, like Fallout 76, one of the big features is being able to build up your player home, and like people can see it and that kind of thing. But I wonder if I wonder how deep it goes, and if at some point YouTube videos will like feature the homes.
Yeah, I don't know either, because I haven't played multiplayer, so I'm not sure like if it's because it seems like a place you can visit and you can have people just walk in and out of. So presumably playing multiplayer, that can happen.
But when you enter multiplayer spheres in Torchlight, it sort of just creates an instance. And when you go into town, wouldn't your house and the other player's house occupy the same space, or is there like a chessboard of places that it could be?
It's I'm not sure, because it's its own thing. It's like it's its own town, so to speak. It's not even like a house that you have. You basically, one of the quests takes you to this fort that's just off the path. So it's along like the map route, because it like with Diablo and Torchlight, like everything is kind of connected, even though the maps themselves are randomly generated. in their way. It's all connected. So you can walk from point A to point B if you really wanted to without using town portals. But that's all still there with the waypoints and everything. And so this is just one of those places off the beaten path along the route. So I'm not sure if it's whoever hosts, it's their instance, and then you can go into theirs, or if it's its own thing and you can't go into either. I'm not certain. But yeah, they definitely don't occupy the same house, like if you were having multiplayer in Skyrim, for example, kind of thing. Okay. I don't know. But I'm looking forward, like I said, to exploring more of that. And then they have, like you get obviously your quests that are kind of never ending, and like in Torchlight, you get shown the rewards you're going to get, and you kind of can choose like I want the helmet or I want the weapon or whatever. So that all stuff is still there. But then they have these other ongoing quests in the background that you can swap between, that you slowly accrue points into, and it just unlocks bigger things. So it'll be like the level 1 unlock will be just like a ton of loot. Level 2 will be like one of those statues that you can now have the blueprints for and build in your fort. Level 3 will be like you'll do more damage with fire and ice weapons and stuff like that. And you can kind of select, they're all kind of themed, like one's an explorer pack, so it's more towards like the adventuring in, whereas one's the not the homemaker, but it's something very similar to that, where it's definitely geared towards like the fort development, so you get bonuses for the materials and get some free materials and stuff like that. So they've got a lot of like, it almost felt like these, now knowing the history of the Frontiers aspect, it feels like they're kind of holdovers from like the free-to-play-ish, the freemium model of like, those would have been like your daily quests and stuff like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and again, this was an MMO and possibly a free-to-play MMO at one point during development.
Yeah, so it feels like those kind of systems are a bit of a holdover, and also I guess maybe explained why some of the growth mechanics are a bit more simplified.
It sounds like you're still having fun with it, though.
I am, yeah. It's very easy to get sucked into, and it's got all like the charm and the flash of the first two, where you can see obviously the inspiration of Diablo, but like it has its very own style where it's much more colorful and vibrant. Characters are much more cartoony. So far the voice acting is solid.
It's steampunk and not gothic, and let it be known, I am shocked that a Diablo-inspired game could gives you a sort of one more click, one more encounter kind of addictability. Shocked, I say.
Yes, I'm sure. And now that we're doing this on a video podcast, we'll have the evidence of seeing that shocked face.
Oh yeah, I am just. It's not like I've listened to thousands of hours of podcasts while playing Diablo games before, right? Or Torchlight games. I put some hard time into Torchlight 2, especially.
I had a lot of fun with it. I beat it. It was a good game.
Mm-hmm. No, it is good. I got a character to veteran and into a level in the low 80s, but then nice. when I unlocked New Game Plus, the like Zone 1 was kicking my ass, and that was my Torchlight 2 ceiling.
That's fair.
It's funny. I was actually when we were talking about who's going to review it, I was thinking about doing it because it's been a long time since I played a good old fashioned like Diablo style. Just one more click. I think the last one I played was Path of Exile a few years ago.
Path of Exile is still going strong. They still update that thing.
Oh, yeah. It's great. It's really great. At least it was when I played it. It came out in 2013.
I'm trying to think of the last really good one I played. It might be Torchlight. Well, okay, I played a lot of Diablo 3 in the 2013-2016 range. So it was my heyday of that was the last time I really got into one deep.
And I can't remember at the site we had one of our newer folks. Is it Quentin or Isaac? One of them is super into Diablo 3, and they're on leaderboards and stuff with it, like very competitively. I forget who it is now. They can scream at me later in mail or on Slack for forgetting who it was. But again, all that stuff. It's a very easy thing to stick with and get lost in. And I guess we're starting to get to the point where, wasn't there? Yeah, we just got like a tease that Diablo 4 is coming. So that's
we've got a teaser trailer with like a cinematic in it.
I think we just mentioned that. 2 podcasts.
That was about a year ago when we got that one. But they released some more information on it that probably would have happened in BlizzCon 2020, right. but that's passed. So there's still a lot of stuff behind the curtain. We know that it's going to have 5 classes, but we only know about I think the first 3. But Barbarian, Sorceress, and Druid, which were all in Diablo 2. Mm-hmm. But
Druids are rad.
Yeah, Yeah, it looks cool. It looks like they're going for more gothic horror and less arcadey action than what Diablo 3 was. And for you Diablo story buffs, at least the central conflict at the beginning is centered around Lilith, who was a Diablo 2 super boss who was allegedly the mother of the primeval major bosses from Diablo 2 and 3. So they're definitely going into a piece of Diablo lore that people are aware of, but is largely unexplored. So it looks cool, but they're still mostly playing their cards close to the chest. I don't think this game is coming out in 2021 even.
I don't think so either. And I mean, a lot of the enthusiasm for the game was dampened at the time because of the Blizzard Hong Kong controversy.
Yeah,
I don't think a lot of that's faded yet. It's surprising because Diablo 4 should be a much more there should be more people excited for this game than there are.
Yeah, that was that was also late 2019 controversy around the suspension of a couple big, I think they were Hearthstone streamers.
Yeah.
They might have been Overwatch streamers. But basically Blizzard sided with the Chinese government and not protesters of the situation going on in Hong Kong at the time, and that got a lot of people very upset. So Blizzard sort of quieted down and hoped it would all blow over, but it really hasn't.
It hasn't blown over in the Blizzard.
I mean,
anyways,
yeah, it's
dumb your thing there.
It's cooled slightly, but I think it's still in the back of mind for a lot of gamers and a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like they did not handle this well.
Still
obviously,
very relevant. Look, just happened with Genshin Impact, right?
Yeah.
Well, sort of. I mean, Genshin Impact is by a independent developer in China, and certain words connected to Hong Kong and Taiwan are completely banned in Genshin Impact. So Genshin Impact is an extremely popular indie RPG right now that is has gacha elements and is similar to Breath of the Wild and how action takes place. Hugely popular right now. I avoid gacha, so I haven't been playing it. But a lot of people were turned off by it because of its connection to China. It has a lot of banned language in it, which again is the price that those developers have to pay to live and work in China, but is also a very important issue to a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. It's and you gotta pick your battles, I suppose, if they want to make it or not. But it's an unfortunate position to be in, but also they made a choice, so other people are going to make choices based on that, right? So. But that's basically what I've been playing. More Torchlight. It's good. I'm excited to play some more of it. I just haven't had the time. But looking back quickly before we move on to bigger topics, just the stuff that was discussed 10 years ago, stuff that was topical or not. I mean, it wasn't even stuff that was recently out, because at this point, a lot of the talk on the episode was around like Final Fantasy 13 had just kind of, I think, was the big thing from Square Enix at that point.
I think that 13.2 had been announced.
Yeah,
but there was a lot of 13 disappointment talk in the episode.
It sure was. So naturally, they were talking about Final Fantasy 9. I think was the first thing that was covered. That was who was talking about? Was that? No, Zach was Residents of Fate. Who was playing?
No. Kyle was playing.
Kyle
Final
was
Fantasy
playing.
9.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the panelists were Rob Steinman, Dennis Rubinstein, Zachary Pinchik, and Kyle Miller.
Thank you. There we are. And so Rob posed the question of what people are playing. Kyle's playing FF9. And one question I did want to ask both of you, what came out of that one, on the assumption you've played all of them, what was your favorite PS era Final Fantasy?
Final Fantasy
I feel like
9.
I know what the answer is.
9.
I think I really liked all of them in the moment, but now that I have 20 years of separation, it's definitely 9.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to beat because it really brings everything together really nicely. And I feel like my nostalgia keeps me really tethered to 7, but I have to admit that 9 is the better game. But I still think I have a lot more love for 7.
I think I have the most love for the SNES era of Final Fantasy games, and 9 brought like the visuals and presentation of the PS1 era with more, but more rooted in the traditionalism of the SNES era. And I was frustrated by certain gameplay parts of 8 and 9 making sort of a return to form with a bunch of modern stuff and a really lovely story.
Yeah.
Again, when I played 7 through 9. Yeah, I played 7 through 9 within a couple of years after each of them came out, and I liked all of them. But with the benefit of hindsight, it's 9.
I think one of the reasons 9 is so popular is it took everything that Final Fantasy was known for in both the SNES era and the PlayStation 1 era, and it was a culmination of all of it. Like it it used every lesson they learned from from 7 and 8 with, creating a 3D space, creating beautiful backgrounds, the cinematics. Back in the day, no one did cinematics like Square. And then they also took the strength of the story of the crystals, of mages, and they put that in there, and they brought it back to where it started out.
Which you could argue was possibly too safe a bet, and I think that was something that I think was held against it a little bit at the time, but also a lot of fans wanted that.
Yeah, there was a lot of back in that age. There was a lot of blowback against anything that was not super dark and super like angry and stuff. I mean, you saw that with Zelda, for example.
Yeah, people were really upset with Link looking like the elf that wants to be a dentist in Wind Waker. Yeah, but but again, with the benefit of hindsight, I think that Wind Waker probably has more fans than Twilight Princess does.
Yeah.
Don't come at me, Peter.
Yeah,
but I think Twilight Princess is sort of below average for Zelda, other than a couple of the dungeons. But anyway, one point that they were making in episode 1 was that how Final Fantasy is always Square's experimental series. Yeah, how like 7 and 8 were a lot unlike their predecessors, and 9 did make a lot of references to crystals and like classes of FF1 and things, but really doesn't play or feel like any other FF game that came before necessarily.
No. Well, and they bring back the fourth player.
Right. They brought back a fourth party member.
Yeah.
And but then they went back down to 3 and 10. But like 10, 12, 13 are all very different looking, different feeling games, even though they're in the flagship franchise of Square Enix, while Dragon Quest games, like for better or for worse, will always at least feel like a Dragon Quest game. So like the experimentalism of Final Fantasy is something that they were bringing up a lot, and they had a lot of positive things to say about FF9 and probably also 10. But Rob is not a fan of FF12 or 13, and made it abundantly clear in this episode. Or 8, yes. Yeah, maybe 8 had the most hate. He even said that 8 was perceived as being a favorite, which he said there was a love fest for FF8, and I don't really remember that, but
not anymore.
But we had that as the coin that I can only think it was termed by Rob. Was coined by Rob was the revisionist history thing that he mentioned a lot in the podcasts. I don't even think we'd hit that point yet with 8, where there was a big revisionist history of like now we all love it. I think people were coming around to certain aspects of it, but it certainly wasn't a love fest.
For a while, FF8 was the second highest selling title in the whole series. So saying it's unpopular is incorrect. But like I think like certain circles really didn't like parts of FF8, and we might have been within those circles as fans of old school Final Fantasy games. That's right. I used to write for a Final Fantasy VI website before joining RPGFan, and there was a lot of FF8 haters in that group. But I think a lot of people like FF8, but Rob and Rob, he's revising his own revisionist history. It's a popular one, but strong opinions on Retro Encounter Episode 1.
Yeah, there you go. It's
and there still are. I mean, if you bring up Final Fantasy VIII with pretty much any RPG fan or Final Fantasy fan, there are going to be strong opinions about that game.
It's definitely the butt of a lot of jokes, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a slightly divisive game, but it has its lovers and its haters.
I definitely bounced off it the first time I played it, and then the second time I played it, I really liked it. I mean, I get where Rob was coming from, and one of the things like he was harping on the most is he didn't like how easy it was to break. But conversely, I liked that because it made you feel like you understood the system. Like once you grasped the system and understood the strategy of it, it was very satisfying to break in a sense. In the same vein, I think we discussed this with like Bravely Default and stuff too. Like when you understand how to make the system work for you, it's very satisfying. Like, you don't want to make it too easy or whatever, and if it's that broken, that's unfortunate. Like, Monk Ramza, 2 hands, but it with Blade Grasp. But but at the same time, you're the one who figured out that strategy, so that there's that extra level of satisfaction, I guess, that I think you can't really take away. So when you understand like where the draw points are and what spells are going to boost your HP to ridiculous levels to overcome the whole parody of leveling up throughout the game. Mm-hmm. I think that's a lot of fun personally. And then you get to the points where you're like, I'm just going to use Diablo's no encounters because I don't really need them and I can just enjoy the story. I thought that was kind of neat too, that you could turn it off.
Go ahead, John.
I think that Final Fantasy VIII has a bit of the middle child syndrome in a similar way that Final Fantasy V does on the Super Nintendo system, and I guess 2 does on the NES. They were trying something a little bit different. In this case, they were kind of throwing out almost all of the medieval elements. Like Final Fantasy VII still straddles the line between fantasy and sci-fi, whereas this, with the guy, I remember the Gunblade being a massive controversy back then, and I was only like 13 years old. And they were like, Gunblade, what the heck is this? And then
super cool.
I thought it was kind of a cool thing. I like Final Fantasy.
It was so 90s, my gosh.
Yeah, it was the Gunblade. I like Final Fantasy. I didn't hate it. I think it's a perfectly solid Final Fantasy game. It's not the Final Fantasy game that I would play if I had the choice, but if it was put in front of me, I'd probably play it, and I'd probably really enjoy the heck out of the card game in it.
Oh yeah, I mean, now Final Fantasy XIV has both Triple Triad and Gunblades, which is those are the two great legacies of FF8. But to the point of breaking the game, like. It's fun creating overpowered characters in a lot of different RPGs. RPGs aren't fighting games. They don't necessarily need competitive balance to be good or fun. Because we're not trying to create Final Fantasy VIII esports here.
No.
But I mean, even I don't like it as much as 7 or 9, I think, in part because it's not even fun to break. Like, to properly break FF8, you have to sit around draw junctioning for hours, and that's not even a fun version of grinding.
Time for that these days.
Yeah, and like leveling imbalances is weird. The enemies level up with you, which can be devastating if you get everyone to level 100. Then enemies can level 5 death you instantly, including a couple bosses.
Yeah.
So the game like encourages you breaking it and then punishes you for breaking it sometimes.
You gotta watch
I think.
Yeah.
It's fun, and interacting with a lot of the weird FF8 stuff is great, but it doesn't always work. And again, I think it's my least favorite of the 7, 8, 9 trio.
That stands to reason. One thing I did want to mention before we go on to the other games, though, what's fun is the where are they now sort of aspect of, like, you know, we thought that we were on to 13, and this was the time where everyone thought that Square Enix was in a huge slump and everything was going down before we finally got to 14. And it was still awful, and then A Realm Reborn fixed everything, and then we're kind of in this resurgence of Square Enix getting their groove back. And but at this point, you know, PlayStation had Final Fantasy. It had left the Super Nintendo, had left Nintendo, but now here in 2020 now, but like back in 2019, we got the announcement that like 7, 8, and 9 were coming to the Switch with their ports. We had all these like quality of life upgrades, which essentially undoes a lot of what they were complaining about in the podcast, how like 8 especially is egregious of it, but like the time that it takes to do the grinding, the time that it takes for animations and stuff, all this stuff was done away with now.
Yeah, there's a fast forward option in most of the modern versions of FF7, 8, 9. And but there was a lot of are JRPGs over, is Square Enix over, nothing is original anymore kind of commentary in episode 1 that was a little startling to me, because I know Rob can be pessimistic sometimes, but it was just,
yes, he does say he's the hater.
Yeah, the haterade was flowing in that episode.
It was a pessimistic time, if I recall, and not in terms of like, I think in terms of society and things like that. But... Not games at large, but in RPGs. It really wasn't a whole lot of hope back then. And then
because Square Enix was such a pinnacle, like not pinnacle, but just they were on such a pedestal of being like a titan in the industry and of the force behind JRPGs, and to see them in a slump made everyone be like, "Is it done? Are we over? Is that it? Like, is the golden age gone?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, if you want to look at the last decade, after this episode, I mean, we talked about it on the recent episode of Retro, like the best games of, I think the 2010s were a real golden age for RPGs specifically, like some of the new ideas that were being explored, new genres, the way that, again, RPG elements were being put into games that weren't traditionally RPGs, really revitalized the whole concept.
Yeah.
In that podcast, I think the 90s had more of our favorite years, but the 2010s showed up pretty well. Like we're if 2010 was not a great time for JRPGs, the past several years I think have been pretty damn good.
Yeah.
17 and 18 especially.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a few good years. Anyway,
to that point, the other two games that were discussed was Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey and Resonance of Fate. Shin Megami Tensei, Mike, you were mentioning, it got a 3DS remake, so that's another one that was brought back. But I haven't played either of them, so I don't know anything about it. That's what Dennis was playing back in the day. So I don't think any of us can speak to it, but it's it's more monsters or demons that you befriend.
Well, I can speak to it a little bit. It's a game that's more like Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2, and maybe Nocturne in the 90s and early 2000s than to a Digital Devil Saga or a Persona in the mid 2000s.
Right.
Again, it was a late 2000s DS game that had a 3DS remake, and it's about a group of people that find what I think is basically a portal to hell in Antarctica. So they have to wear sort of like yeah, kind of. There's a little bit of the thing in it. They have to wear like mystical hazmat suits to travel in this and try to figure out the mystery, awesome. The mystery of this weird crevasse. So if you look at the materials for the game, they're looking at these. You might see these sort of these beige suits of armor that almost look like. I mean, they almost look like oh shoot, what are those Japanese idol statues called? Whatever, but it has a really weird vibe to it, but it's a first-person dungeon crawler with classic Shin Megami Tensei elements and a pretty good story. Like it's a well-liked game within the fandom, but I only played the very beginning of the DS version. I didn't get super far.
And then Resonance of Fate
my hardcore
ridiculous.
Yeah, that Resonance of Fate is another game I only played the beginning of because that game's battle system is weird. There's
a
lot going on.
Encyclopedia to essentially dive into it.
Yeah, it's oh boy, it's like a genre fusion of RPG and shooter in a way that I think they compared it to Valkyria Chronicles in the episode, yeah. but Valkyria Chronicles is a little bit more third person, a little bit more of a strategy game. But Resonance of Fate, I think Marcos was a big fan of Resonance of Fate. He's tried to get it on Retro Encounter a couple times, but it's a very systems heavy RPG that never really connected with me.
It's one I wouldn't mind going back on. Also, one thing that did come up in that discussion too was that Rob really doesn't like Nolan North for some reason.
Yeah, that's weird.
Does anyone know why that is? I mean, he seems like a really affable person.
He's probably too handsome. He's sort of like he has like a classic leading man voice.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I get possibly the criticism that he sounds too samey across everything, maybe, but maybe it's just at that point too that Nolan North was really hitting his stride and starting to be in everything. So maybe there's that as well.
At that point, he was at least in the first two Uncharted games and the 2008 Prince of Persia. I'm trying to think of what else happened. I'm not going to look up his IMDb page or anything, but
I keep crossing him with like Mark Mira, but they're both like pretty strong contemporaries too, for that matter.
Yeah, I think that sort of Troy Baker became a major leading man guy in the 2010s, and I was very amused. I think Uncharted 4 came out and the recent God of War came out a couple years apart. And in Uncharted 4, Nolan North and Troy Baker are brothers. And in God of War, you fight Magni and Modi, who are voiced by North and Baker, and they're also brothers, and you have to murder both of them. in two of the biggest AAA PS4 games, those two leading men are hero brothers and villain brothers. I was really amused by that.
Rob also mentioned that he got hate mail about his FF8 review from, I guess, maybe that's what brought up the idea that people really like it.
And was delighted.
Right, and that's the kind of thing that feeds Rob, I suppose. He's a teacher for the sadistic reasons.
The only hate mail I've ever gotten was when I wrote a review of a South Park game, and I said that South Park was a little bit puerile, and I got an email saying that I don't understand comedy, so that was fun.
Oh yeah, I think that did come up. Yeah, I remember you mentioned that on a podcast or something.
I may have mentioned it before, but I don't specifically.
I was gonna ask if anybody has gotten hate mail here. So you got a bit. Have you gotten any yet, Jono, on any of your reviews or anything?
I got one comment that stuck with me, and that was I got someone accusing me of taking a payoff for giving Cthulhu Saves Christmas a good review.
Oh right, I do remember that.
Zvoid Games, they have some deep pockets to bribe RPGFan with. Yeah,
that's a popular opinion. When people don't like what a games writer is saying, they were obviously in the pocket of the people that gave us the game. It really isn't.
I know, and we probably really shouldn't mention all those free Switches we keep being given, right?
Yeah. Just from the Nintendo warehouse.
Yeah, no kidding.
The best free thing I ever got from a game developer was when I demoed the John Wick game at E3 once. They gave me a couple John Wick coins from the movies.
Oh, right.
They were little
that's pretty sweet.
brass imitation coins, but that if I were to review the game, it would obviously get an 11 out of 10 because yeah, I mean they gave me coins.
Yep.
I like shiny.
The extra
things.
one was for the cool swag. I haven't really gotten anything. Like I feel like the closest thing I've gotten to hate mail is just someone being like, your complaints aren't valid. Why are you bringing up something? I think it was on Trials of Mana. They were saying like I was grasping at straws to find negative stuff, which to a point, sure, I guess, but that game, the remake isn't flawless.
It's sort of
the same game we did. There's like 30-second long loading times in that.
Well, exactly, and like and I think that's the worst I got was just them disagreeing with some of my points, but it was more discussion, less you're wrong and you should just quit being a games journalist, and I haven't gotten any of that I know can come out in the industry against from fans towards us, thankfully. But I don't know if I'd meet it with quite the same delight that Rob would.
No, Rob thrives on negativity. Yeah,
right. So the last thing I wanted to bring up before we close out this really awesome special episode was the talking point that Rob brought up, because really we've been touching on it all throughout the episode, and Mike, you first brought it up, was the aspect, the question was that, what do we think about so many RPG mechanics being brought to the non-RPG genres? And it's really, even since then, like, they're talking that it was becoming a thing even 10 years ago, and now that it feels like even FIFA has it, NHL series has had it. Like, there's so many games outside of RPGs now that have some sort of RPG elements in it. It's really grown, and where do I guess, based on the conversation they had, my additional question to you is, why do we think that is?
In my opinion, the reason why RPG elements are incorporated into non-RPGs is to increase the level of immersion within those games. I mean, you give people choices, they get more invested. And those choices don't need to be huge. They don't need to be like classic RPG style moral dilemmas where you have to choose between one bad choice or another. It could
if I join Manchester United, or if I join quick, give me another soccer team, Lucy, I know you know better than I do.
Chelsea.
Perfect.
Will I be able to save the world?
Exactly. And yes, that's a choice that I face daily. And because of that,
amazing football skills.
Yes, my amazing soccer. Wait, I'm Canadian. Do we call it Canadian?
We're North Americans, so I think we call it. I think we call it soccer. You're not a big Toronto FC or Vancouver Whitecaps fan, really?
I've been to a Whitecaps game, and it was actually more fun than I thought it would be.
I think Steve Nash is a part owner of the Whitecaps, and that's the only reason I'm aware of that team at all.
Anyway, yeah, so that's what I think. That's why I think RPG elements are increasingly incorporated into non-RPG games. It's because by giving people an element of choice, by giving them, okay, you can choose this ability or this ability on the skill tree, it gives them ownership of the game and choices that they make, and just a little bit of that can go a long way.
Yeah, that was my thought too. Even when he approached the question on episode 1. What about you, Mike?
I'm in a similar track, but I wouldn't use the word choice or immersion. I would say, I would say growth or efficacy, because part of what one thing I love about RPGs is the feeling of improvement and getting stronger, of being someone that could barely swing a sword at level 1 to being able to swing a sword and have 8 fireballs come out of it at level 80. And a lot of these games basically reward playtime and reward investment with more information, more skill points, more access to skill trees, and it basically, RPG elements are a pathway to character growth and character freedom that are very, very appealing. And there's 2 giant examples of games in the 2010s that I think are not maybe the craziest, but 2 of the biggest implementations of RPG mechanics. I mean, one is a game we've mentioned, I think already, is Assassin's Creed. The Assassin's Creed games before 2017 are, they're open world games, lots of running and jumping and slashing. They're sort of in the lineage of the Prince of Persia games. I think sort of Assassin's Creed. Yeah, I think Assassin's Creed kind of replaced Prince of Persia in the Ubisoft pipeline, basically. But the 3 most recent big budget ones, Origin, Odyssey, and Valhalla, which comes out in a week or 2, they even call them RPGs on the Ubisoft website. There's a lot of character growth. There's experience systems, and they're basically open world one character RPGs. Yeah. When the previous Assassin's Creed games were action games with some RPG elements. So that's a full series transformation. And the other one,
and I wonder why that was, like why they made that choice to just lean fully into it. Was it just fan feedback? Was it better storytelling? And like you said, better freedom of making the character yours?
I'm not a giant fan. I haven't played the series a whole lot, but it's my understanding that the series was starting to get kind of stale. And I mean, when the series gets stale, you have to ask yourself, can we add something to it to brighten it back up again? And I think RPG mechanics did revitalize a lot of the popularity of the series.
I'm not an Assassin's Creed expert, but I think that there were hits and misses in the 2010s before
Absolutely.
Origins.
Like an annualized series almost too, which again they talked about. No,
not almost. I think it was straight up annualized from 2009 to 2015 because from Assassin's Creed 2 through I don't know, either the French Revolution one or the Victorian London one. I'm not sure which. I'm not an expert.
Yeah,
but I think that. I think maybe Skyrim has something to do with it because Skyrim in 2011 was so massively popular that I think a lot of people wanted the bite of that open world, large amounts of freedom RPG apple, and because the world in Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey are enormous. And they wanted some of that pure freedom, huge world RPG elements that Skyrim brought. Because again, those games were, I think, 2017 and 2019. Skyrim was 2011. You could sort of see the timeline of ideas there.
There's very much, but the focus group said, this is what we want.
Yeah, but the other series I wanted to look at is maybe it was maybe something that you wouldn't have thought of as having a lot of RPG elements, and those are fighting games made by NetherRealm Studios.
Which games are theirs?
That's Mortal Kombat and Injustice.
Yes.
And the Mortal Kombat games of the 2010s are remarkably good. You have Mortal Kombat 9, X, and 11, which were 2011, 15, and 19, and Injustice 1 and 2, which were 2013 and 2017.
I didn't realize that. I thought X was still like the current one that they were still releasing stuff for. I didn't realize
No, it's 11. It's 11, and then they released a recent expansion pack for 11 called Mortal Kombat 11 Aftermath.
I just want to know when we're getting another movie. No, I'm kidding. I really don't.
I don't know. They have the movie, the actor that played the movie Shao Kahn as one of the Shao Kahn's. I'm sorry, Shang Tsung as one of the Shang Tsung skins in Mortal Kombat 11.
Awesome.
He hams it up. It's great. But the thing about these is Mortal Kombat 9, which was just called Mortal Kombat, is a straight up fighting game. It goes through the Mortal Kombat 1, 2, 3 stories. It's good, but it's not an RPG at all. Fast forward a couple of years, Injustice 2, the fourth game in this lineage, whenever you use a character, whether it's online, story mode, training mode, whatever, they level up like an RPG character. Okay. You get currency that opens up loot boxes that gets you equipment, which affects your stats and everything. There's even some equipment pieces that turn characters into other characters. It is a Diablo-esque loot hunt as a fighting game with a cast of 40 plus. It is a little weird.
Which creates some interesting looking characters too. By the end of that game, you kind of look like an action figure variant from like Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, you look like a kid who had a bunch of action figures, but then we're replacing the arms and legs of different ones together.
Yeah,
that's weird. A lot of it's cool. Like a lot of it is different Wonder Woman or Superman costumes from different comics. So it's very carefully chosen, all of the equipment customization, but it has a leveling and equipment customization system that is completely RPG and can affect your play online. Like I think you can enter online lobbies that are no equipment to make everything as balanced as everyone is with their base equipment, but they turned an arcade fighting game into a loot-based RPG, and that is something that is crazy to me when I heard about it when it was coming out and playing it earlier this year, because I play everything years late because I have a podcast to run.
Yes,
but
it needs to be retro.
Yeah, exactly. If it's not 2 years old, I'm not allowed to talk about it unless I put spoiler cast in the title. Injustice 2 spoiler cast coming 2021. But the story mode in that game is not bad actually, but and it even has choice elements to it.
The ending.
You can
and that's brings me back to
the final
NHL.
The final chapter
I remember trying to play online, and people would just be like stick handling in circles around me with their super fast unlocked skates, equipment. They'd have golden helmets and stupid stuff like that But again, the loot grind, leveling up your loot and stuff like that would just like demolish me in just a sport game that's about supposed to be how good you are at hockey.
Yeah, and again, there are modes, at least in Injustice 2, to play online where it's like equipment all off, everyone at base level. But still, like I mean, it's just a symptom of RPG elements being present in more and more games. Like, I mean, you could basically argue that Far Cry is an RPG, even though it's extremely open world FPS. But because I mean, RPG mechanics are just fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah, RPG mechanics are just fun. People like getting stronger. People like getting more freedom and more tools in their toolkit.
Another form of progression in a game, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And whether it's an arcade fighter loot hunt or a whole big series transforming from action open world to action RPG, it's the times we live in. But being RPG fans, I welcome it.
Yeah, one thought I just had that you were saying though about like the growth of an action series, or like I was saying about the hockey stuff, or even like in FIFA, how much of that though you wonder is almost like handholdy and making it more like, because one thing that Rob was saying, does it dilute the RPG genre? That I don't think it does, but does it dilute the genre that they're putting them in? Because then it kind of takes away the get good aspect. If you're just leveling up your gear, does that create a great balancing act? If you're like, well, I'm not so good at shooting, but now I've leveled up my gun that if when I do get a shot in, it's going to kill something real good. Whereas the people who are actually like really good at the Twitch shooting controls, they're getting headshots left, right, and center just because they're very good at it through practice, not because they've gotten the golden gun with 100% accuracy.
I think it's two different it's two different ways to play a game. Some people play a game to, get good, to stream and to really, show off their skills online. Other people play it for the story, to get the narrative, which is another place that RPGs have influenced other games, like narrative.
Yeah, again, there's a FIFA story that I literally was in, and I never would have thought that any point in my acting career would I be acting in a FIFA story. Yeah,
and for some people it's a combination of the two. Like, you want to get good enough to get through the story.
Yeah. And that's like, and then even then there's a lot of games where you can tone down like how casually you want to play just to get through the story too.
To get back to something we were talking about earlier, balance isn't always fun. There are people that want to play a balanced multiplayer game, and they will get good and master something and try and get to DreamHack or Evo or something, and those are the people that maybe they are indulging in a loot system like Injustice 2 has, but they'll be presumably playing against others that have also indulged in that loot system. So but there's people that maybe don't go online to play, and they are perfectly happy seeing their favorite characters' stats go up and have them just absolutely wreck the CPU player over and over, because they care more about the feeling of power than the feeling of mastery.
Yeah, the power fantasy.
Exactly. Like the power fantasy might be more important to them than multiplayer dominance. Yeah. But there's no wrong way or right way to enjoy a game like this. So I don't think. There will always be people that try to insist to get good and want to play a game that way, but those are the people that'll go online versus people that, even a game with a large multiplayer component, will only play it in single player. Like, I know Diablo players and Torchlight players that only do single player because that's the experience they want. Even though they won't get a full set of items quite as quickly, which is the main reason I played Diablo 3 online. It's like man, I want to get my headhunter set like in an hour instead of 2 weeks.
That's totally fair. Yeah, that's a good point. And again, there's whether it's those games that have the elements in them and you can turn them off or on or not. There's other games that will be for purists, anyways. That don't have RPG elements. So there's always something, obviously, if you want to be in the get good crowd or not. But yeah, it's just a thought that occurred to me while we were discussing it. Like, does it cheapen the experience in any way, shape, or form? But you're right. It's whatever you want out of it.
No,
it's a good point, though.
It gives people the option of a different experience. If there's a lot of multiplayer modes or RPG elements that you can indulge in or not indulge in.
Yeah, and Mass Effect 3 was perfect for that because it was tied directly to the story with the multiplayer element. You could do the shooting combat cover squad based mechanic multiplayer game and unlock reinforcements or whatever it was. I can't remember now for the story mode. Or there was
I think they patched out some of it, but there was like a readiness stat.
Yes.
That and you could increase that by playing the mobile game or by playing multiplayer matches.
That's what it was.
And the multiplayer wasn't bad. It was a sort of a co-op horde, third person horde mode.
Yeah.
And I played it a little bit to get my readiness high enough to get a good ending. But
you could do it in the single player without even as well too. I thought there was a way, but it just wouldn't get as high. Maybe I can't remember.
Maybe I think like you with single player only you couldn't get above 60 or something.
Gotcha.
And
sorry,
there was I'd have to look up to get exact numbers. But I remember it was a little bit clumsily added, but because they were basically giving people story carrots on a stick for ways for people to want to play multiplayer and the mobile game, which I didn't always appreciate. I get it was a 2012 experiment, which makes me a little bit more forgiving of it. But I did not love feeling like I had to play multiplayer to just get story stuff I wanted. Even though I didn't hate the multiplayer.
No, thankfully it was fun. That's the upshot. Mm-hmm. It's not like it was unplayable, but again, that's not for everybody either, right?
One of the things that really amused me about this conversation that they were having was, I guess it was 2010. There was almost an undercurrent where they said they were RPGs, but there was an undercurrent of almost debating whether Borderlands and Mass Effect were RPGs.
In the episode, yeah.
In the episode at points. And nowadays it's
back in episode 1.
Of course they are. It's just reached that point. And it does make me wonder if in 10 years from now, if somebody, say, brings up Spider-Man, for example, if an RPG fan then will be like, yeah, Spider-Man Miles Morales is an RPG. I don't know why RPG Fan doesn't have a review for it.
Again, that's not an argument I need to have exactly, but Spider-Man is an open world action game with a lot of RPG elements, and even though I don't think it necessarily crosses a line into full RPG, that's at least
it goes right up to the wire though, right up to the limit of it, and
it's undeniable that it is full of RPG elements.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing, and I think that conversation was actually extraordinarily helpful. Because for me, it clarified a bit more of what we cover and what we don't, in the sense that if a game is not advertised as an RPG, if a company does not advertise it as an RPG, like Spider-Man, for example, RPG is not mentioned. There are RPG elements, but it's not an RPG. RPG Fan can't legitimately cover that through the lens of role-playing games, because it's not what we do. But if another game comes along, like, say, Marvel's Avengers, which does advertise itself as an RPG, we can look at it through that lens, and we can legitimately review it through that lens, satisfying our mission statement.
Right.
I think part of it might be that Marvel's Avengers does have multiple playable characters.
Yeah, that's true.
And so there's a character switching or possibly teamwork element to it. I haven't done a lot of research into that's a recent game. I think it came out only a month or two ago.
Yeah, but there's another good example that came out a couple of weeks ago, which was, I guess, rivaling Batman games. Rocksteady came out with Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, and UB Montreal came out with Gotham Knights.
No, Gotham Knight was one of the Arkham games.
That's one that just got announced, right?
Yeah,
this is the one with a bunch of former Robins teaming up to find out who killed Batman. Right?
Yeah, and it looks like, if you look at it, it looks like an Arkham game. But
okay, you're right. It is Gotham Knights, but I was confusing it with Gotham Knight.
Yeah, that's Arkham Knight.
Singular.
Yeah,
you're right. I was confusing Gotham Knights with Arkham Knight. That's what happened.
Yeah,
my bad.
But the difference is Arkham Knight. Gotham Knight is being described and marketed as an RPG. And if you watch the videos, there's damage counters. I guess there are multiple playable characters. You can do it in multiplayer. Each one plays differently. But Suicide Squad versus the Justice League, or Kills the Justice League, is not an RPG. It's not even advertised. Likely there will be RPG progression systems in it, but even though there are multiple characters and it looks very similar and it'll play very similar, it's not considered to be an RPG. I think it really does, in a lot of ways, it really does boil down to how the developer and how the publisher wants to advertise the game and market the game. Because
there's definitely a vibe around, them calling it an RPG makes it very different from them calling it an action game with RPG elements, for sure. It draws a very different crowd.
Yeah, because if Miles Morales slapped RPG on the genre section, I would say, yeah, we can review that. Sure, they're claiming it's an RPG, so we can look at it as an RPG. But if they're not, I don't think it's fair for us to review it as an RPG, even if there are RPG elements in it.
I admittedly take a very liberal view as to what an RPG is or isn't. Again, I am the first person to tell you that a taco is a sandwich and a bowl of ice cream with more than 2 ingredients is probably also a sandwich.
I would call this soup more than anything.
Soup is also a sandwich.
Gazpacho.
But anyway, gazpacho is also a sandwich. But anyway, back to RPGs. I think that a lot of different games that we cover will get a "Hey, that's not an RPG" Facebook comment if we post a news article about it, and there's nothing we can do about that. So I think that anything that we have, it's extremely subjective, and I think that if a game has some of what we would call RPG elements, and there's 1 or 2 staff members interested in playing or covering it, then we might as well do it. But again, like, people have very rigid ideas of what is or isn't an RPG, and we have to play to our audience a little bit. So and also, like, I mean, we covered the Zelda series very widely, but that's only because there's a lot of Zelda fans on staff, and we've always covered Zelda. It's the weird precedent holdout.
Zelda's one of those exceptions to the rule, though, I think.
Why though? Like, I think we should cover Zelda, but I think we maybe should also cover Spider-Man. Like, I don't love having what is an RPG conversations, but I acknowledge and welcome these widespread growth of RPG elements within other genres, because I almost always like a game better if it has some RPG elements in it.
I do too. Yeah, I think there's no argument about that. And I mean, I've had conversations with Mike back before I was review manager specifically about Metroidvanias, because we do RPG Fan covers some Metroidvanias and some Metroidvanias we don't. And I think it really does border on what side does it come down on? Is it a little bit more Vania or is it a little more Castle?
No. In general, I think that, like, we don't cover the Metros and we do cover the Vanias because you level up in most of the Castlevania games.
Right.
Yeah, like that's the distinction that we make sometimes, and I don't think that's totally fair. I think we should cover Metroid and probably most Mega Man games. You get stronger throughout the game. There's weapon customization. There's a lot of customization elements in 2018's Mega Man 11, including equipable items. It's Mega Man, basically an RPG.
I mean, late era Mega Man games on the DS were Metroidvanias.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, like ZX and like the late Mega Man Zero games.
They're awesome.
Those weird what was that weird one that that had like 3 versions to it? I really should, but I didn't like them. Is why I didn't play any after ZX Advent. Oh shoot, I don't feel like googling it right now. But okay. Like there's a lot of choice and a lot of a lot of customization in Mega Man. So is Mega Man an RPG? Again, like probably not in common parlance, but RPG elements are they're everywhere now.
Yeah, and I mean, it also breaks down, and they confronted this too, what is an RPG in terms of, like, Japanese RPGs versus Western RPGs, like, basically the Dungeons and Dragons model versus the JRPG model of it.
Right. Yeah, and that's the whole Western versus JRPG, and we've had that talk before, and that's an even bigger conversation that'll make this podcast even longer than it's already running.
Yeah, we should probably wrap this up pretty soon.
It's all good. My big takeaway from this whole what is an RPG or RPG elements in other games, though, is can we review Warhammer Dawn of War 2, Jono?
I'll tell you what, if Rob comes to me and says, "Hey, Jono, I have this idea for a review," I'll consider it.
We'll let him do a retro review of it. You'll consider it.
I'll send him a text like, "Hey, we listened to Random Encounter 001 and
you made
Dawn of War 2.
You made a hell of a compelling case, and so
2020, 10 years later, it's been approved. Oh, gracious. Salt in the wound. But yes, the where are they now of that is no, Dawn of War 2 did not make it into RPG Fans reviews if you go search for it. But yeah, to wrap things up, at this point, Zach went into the news, as was the old format. We've since more or less done away with that, just because conversations just go on, and why rush everybody when you're having a good talk? And now I just shove it in at the beginning, and it's more about what's going on at the site, less about releases. So whatever.
If you want to know what's going on with the news, go to the site. We cover everything.
Basically, exactly.
And if you want to see a really busy week for news, I mean, you're having the Xbox Series S and the PlayStation 5 debut within a few days of each other, with dozens of new games and ports coming out the same week. We're in an extremely busy week, a couple weeks.
November is going to be insane. There are so many big games coming out, too.
Yeah, the end of October is a little busy, and November is going to be completely bonkers.
Oh, yeah.
And I still have to make my daughter a costume.
It's going to be nuts. Like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Yakuza Like a Dragon, Cyberpunk 2077, Hyrule Warriors. We have a busy friggin' month coming up.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's right. Hyrule Warriors is coming out. Oh, gosh.
And God knows, maybe even Bravely Default 2.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of scuttlebutt about that.
Yeah.
I think, but Square Enix, at least at the time of recording, which is October 19th, is still insisting it has a 2020 release date.
Mm-hmm. We'll see.
We'll find out.
Well, that was the joke I said to Mike a few days ago. At this point, it's going to be on a Nintendo system. I wouldn't be surprised if they like stealth drop it in a direct at like 4 a.m. on a Thursday night.
Here are some of the features on Bravely Default 2. Also, it's out now.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I think that the likeliest scenario is it does come out in late November, early December, because otherwise, if it was really going to get delayed, they would have told us by now, because they're really taking it down to the wire.
When's the Octopath mobile game drop? Because I'm wondering it might coincide with that.
It might. I think it's already out in Japan.
It's already out in Japan. Has not been announced in here yet. I mean, there's some.
Right.
It looks pretty good, actually. I mean, it looks.
They did just
like Octopath.
The Dragon Quest mobile game just had its beta launch in North America, so that's happening soon. Right. Dragon Quest Tact.
Yes, that's what it's called, right? Because it wasn't what it was called in Japan. And that's why I thought there was two of them. Or no, there is two.
No, there's a different one that's called like Dragon Quest of the Stars, which I think that's already out in North America and Japan. But Tact is the one that's more focused on monsters versus characters and grid-based combat rather than turn-based.
Yeah, I'm curious about that one. We'll check it out. I've been going hard on War of the Visions lately, but we'll talk about that in a laser episode.
I played a lot of Brave Exvius in like 2016, but I think that my Final Fantasy gacha days are behind me.
That's totally fair, as you just said. Yeah, at any rate. But yeah, we're not going to do news, is the moral of the story here. But I did want to quickly wrap this episode up with the final look back at episode 1 of the Where Are They Now? Which I think Solosi is the most authoritative source on that, with his broad memory of these things. Where are they now these days?
I'm cursed with a good memory for details. Rob Steinman was the main host of Random Encounter from 2010 to I think 2017. Then he stayed an extra year to do a couple reviews, but officially retired from RPGFan in 2018. He is a teacher who lives in Pennsylvania with his lovely wife Jackie and his 4 cats and 2 dogs. They're all wonderful people and animals.
And I know they were possibly working towards babies. I'm not sure if that's happened yet, though. There was talk
when Rob left the website. He said that was something him and Jackie were talking about, but we have no news on that front. Yeah. And I do text Rob like multiple times a week. We hang out.
Nice.
Yeah, they're lovely people. I love visiting.
Despite
them
him being the resident hater and gruff around the edges, he sounds like a really chill dude.
He is. He's a good hang, and I met him at MagFest in 2014, and like how much I enjoyed the RPG fan people then, which was early 2014, inspired me to apply for the website a few months later. But and I was already a podcast listener. But anyway, Kyle Miller. To be on the cast with him,
but we didn't cross over. Anyway, sorry, Kyle.
Jono, you've podcasted with Rob Steinman earlier this year.
Yeah, wait, I did, didn't I?
Yeah.
See, I don't have a mind for details, apparently. Memory for details.
We did two Yakuza 0 episodes in June.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, but again, I have a weird memory for things. Kyle Miller, I did overlap with him on the website a little bit. He was there probably about as long as Rob, I think 7 or 8 years. Yeah, but he retired in 2016 when he was the reviews head, and then that I believe he passed on that mantle. To
Alana,
I think for a while I think it was Mike and then Alana.
Okay.
and Alana was the reviews manager for at least a year, probably maybe more like 2 or 3 years. Then you have Zach Pinchik, who of the 4 people on the episode 1 had the longest career within the games industry. He was a news writer, and I think also but I don't think he was ever the news head, because Liz Moss was the news head for like a decade. But he was a news reporter who wrote a lot of news sites and was sort of covering the news section of the podcast for at least the first few episodes. Yeah. But he eventually worked for 8-4, which is a popular localizer operating out of Japan, and was on a couple episodes of their popular podcast 8-4 Play, which is also true of our mutual friend Stephen Meyerink, who was a panelist on a Random Encounter much later.
Yes, and I do remember when Zach left, but he was going to Japan. I remember him leaving, and I was like, oh, it's a bummer, because he was a really great voice on the podcast.
Yeah, he was. I thought he was a strong voice in this episode. And the 4th panelist was Dennis Rubenstein, who still interacts with our RPG fan on social media. Like, you can see him on Twitter and Facebook commenting on our stuff. But he was a reviewer for a couple years. He retired before 2014. I never interacted with him. But I believe that I don't know why exactly, but Rob seemed very invested in Dennis Rubenstein's love life in a way that for reasons I cannot explain. But I hope that Dennis was able to find love and happiness.
Yes. Did he ever get laid because of the podcast and Rob? We may never know, but maybe we'll have to.
Okay,
ask him one day.
Speaking from experience, I don't think podcasting gets you laid unless you're Mark Maron.
Podcast stars? No. Yeah. Okay. That's true. That's a fair point.
Yeah. Like this. We're RPG fan and not RPG. We're RPG.
Sorry.
We're RPG fan and not RPG only fans.
Exactly. As much as we doesn't need to be a thing, but the comedy of it needs to make it a thing. I don't know.
We'll see how 2020 wraps up. Think it's any rougher.
How desperate we are. Looking back to that episode, we've definitely, like we already discussed it, we've cleaned up our act a little bit in terms of the language, and like Jono accused me of, it's me being a family man. It's probably the biggest contributor to it. And it's otherwise I think we've answered a lot of the questions asked in episode 1. It's been a good run, and I am forever grateful that Rob got this podcast off the ground, because then it got us great shows like Retro, like Rhythm, and to further amplify the voices at this website. And it's interesting because it's, for me, I find the podcast is what really started putting RPG Fan on the map for me, because I always knew about the site. I checked in now and again, but it wasn't until like the podcast and I actually started to get to know some of the faces of the site that I actually found myself invested in the site.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think podcasts are a great way to get to know people on almost a personal level. You're listening to a conversation, and you're kind of a passive participant in that conversation.
Right? Well, I was very active. Yeah, I don't know how many times I yelled at them to be like, it's atelier. Atelier. Stop saying atelier, you uncultured swines. Or other things of that nature.
Things that would require a chocobo sound.
Well, it's also funny, too, because I did the backlog where, like, when I got into it, it was so far, I want to feel like it was like 50 episodes in, so I went back to 1, and listening to things at that point, having the foreknowledge that they didn't, and being able to kind of like shout out the answers, so to speak. That was also fun too.
Going back in time for almost any version of podcasting mediums is can get really interesting. Like I listen to backlog sports podcasts sometimes, and knowing who wins the championship at the end of the year and having them discuss contenders 3 months earlier is interesting. Well, yeah, it doesn't always work, but it's interesting.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's interesting to hear where they think it's going to be going and what predictions panned out and what didn't. Yeah, especially when it comes to like the E3 podcasts and such.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I feel sorry for people who have to listen to like the first couple of episodes of a podcast 4 or 5 years from now for 2020. They're just going to be like, oh yeah, I remember this. Guess I can skip the first 12 episodes.
We had not figured out Retro Encounter yet in the first several episodes. Some of those early listens are rough. I don't mean that to disparage myself or the other panelists. We just hadn't figured out yet. I think that 2020 is the best year of Retro Encounter because every year we have a better understanding of who we are and what we want to talk about.
Yeah, there's great subjects.
And back to podcasting as a medium, I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I got into them in the late 2000s, like 09, 10 range. And I just think that, like Jono mentioned this, it's like you're being part of a conversation, or like you're hanging out with the with the podcasters. But if you watch an actor on TV or a movie, it's like you're looking through a window into another planet. Like there's distance when you watch an actor or read a writer, but an intimacy and a personality in a radio show or a podcast that I don't know. It's a different kind of connection. Listener and creator than reader or creator or viewer and creator. That's really interesting to me. Like I'm not saying I think I know the people that I listen to on the regular, because they don't know me at all, but it's I feel closer to them than to my favorite podcasters than I do to my favorite actors or writers, in a way that's a little weird, but I kind of like.
I can entirely understand
honesty
that.
to it.
Yeah, and I'm always shocked when people tell me they're a podcast listener, but I have had that happen before, and even some people in RPGFan, similar to you and I, Greg, but maybe a little bit people that have joined more recently, saying that, oh yeah, I started out listening to podcasts on RPGFan and decided to apply. Like there's several of us on site with that origin story.
Yeah, we're the face, right? It's the glory role, so to speak. So hopefully we're being good spokesmen for the site.
To a degree, it is a front-facing role, because podcasts are personality driven more so than reviews, I think.
Yeah, and so it also seems attractive, to be like, one day I could be there too.
Yeah, if somebody listening to this right now someone listening to this right now is going to be the next host, or maybe like 3 hosts down the line of Random or
What have you done? My email inbox is going to blow up now. Why have you done this to me?
I think I can't say this for 100% certainty, but listeners, if you're interested in joining the RPG Fan family, just keep an eye on the website. We do hiring drives fairly often, usually targeting a specific group, like, hey, we really need more reviewers. Hey, we really need more news writers.
I need new people on video team, please. It's just
eventually, I can't say it will happen soon necessarily, but video, streaming, podcasting, those all we may sound the call for those as well. So just keep an eye on the website.
Yeah, exactly. Much like they said in the original thing, we are adding new things to keep up with the times.
Right.
Yes, we're adding a YouTube page and podcasts, and that's about it, actually.
But
you too can join RPG-Fan and make me play Kingdom Hearts 2.
Someone's going to make that happen on Retro one of these days, and I hope you're on the episode. But yeah,
well, I have to be. I have to be. But we did Kingdom Hearts 1 almost 2 years ago.
Oh, you have to.
It's been that long already?
I know Kingdom Hearts 2 is a popular one, so it may yet happen, but no guarantees.
It's fun. At any rate, if you have comments, complaints, wanting to join the site, podcast at rpgfan.com. That's where you can message myself, Jono, and harass us. Let us know what you think of things. Matt Boone did comment on what he wanted to hear on episode 200. Matt, thank you so much for reaching out to us. I couldn't get Rob and Derek and them onto the podcast like we did back at 150, but it was kind of nice being able to take that idea and sort of look at the revisit aspect that we did on this episode. So I hope that kind of satisfies what you're after. As for, like you're saying, a review of the past decade of games, that's a long episode, but we did just do that whole feature on the site. So go check that out, folks. Yeah, I'm probably mentioning it at the top of the episode anyways, but the from 1986 onwards feature that we just covered of RPGs, basically up till now, it's amazing.
We're all pretty proud of it.
It's 87 to 2019, and the feature is called Defending Champions.
Defending Champions, there we are. So that hopefully scratches that itch for you too. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, at gdelmage. Solacey, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at The Real Monsoon, most of the time at Evoker for Dogs, other times, and on the website posting podcasts and writing about vending machines and vampires.
And Jono?
You can find me at Jono Logan on Twitter. You can send me a message through, the email that Greg said earlier. I'm occasionally on Discord. We'd love to get some more mail.
Yeah, it'd be nice. And aside from Random Encounter, we have heavily mentioned Retro Encounter. Anything you want to give up that's coming up for that, Solacey?
Sure. We have, again, a Halloween-themed episode about vampires coming soon, alongside a written feature. We're doing 2 episodes on Final Fantasy X-2 in November. And, sure, in December, we have a couple episodes planned, and one of them is celebrating the 25th anniversary of Tales of Fantasia, but we are not playing it for the podcast. We're doing something special for Tales of Fantasia in December.
I can't believe that December's almost already here. I feel like the three of us were just talking about like Cthulhu Saves Christmas a few months ago. It's kind of nuts.
That was January. That was one of the first episodes of 2020. Yeah. It was really funny. It was really fun talking to the Z-Boyd guys too. I always wish them success.
Yeah, they were great.
It was a good comment.
Their upcoming game is about is a Japanese style RPG about female characters and Shakespeare plays all teaming up for an adventure.
Oh, dope! I haven't heard anything about it, but
I haven't heard anything about it, but I'm looking up now.
They do. They do have a title for it. Oh shoot, let me see. Yeah, I remember it was a really clever title, so I definitely have to Google it now. It's called This Way Madness Lies, a magical girl RPG starring Shakespearean heroines.
Oh my god, it looks amazing.
Yep. I don't know a release date for it, but those Z-Boyd boys, they're always up to something.
Well, if they want to talk about their new game, boy, we'd love to talk to you again about it.
Yeah, no kidding. Forsooth.
Just send me all of the money. Apparently.
Yeah, I'm sure they will be willing to send us a code. They'll be willing to send us a code when it's time to review it, but that will, of course, taint our review because we're receiving handouts, of course.
Yeah, you should buy it next time. Get it for Christmas. We have Rhythm Encounter is back and alive and well with several new episodes that have been coming out. We got 54 coming up soon, so go listen to some great music and some great chat about that music. And then, of course, there's the Phoenix Edge podcast that is continuing to keep up with current events better than I do. And go listen to Hat and Eric chit-chat about everything going on over there. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening. It's been a great 200 episodes. It has been my pleasure to be the host, and I'm glad no one has demanded for me to be thrown off the podcast yet. So I'm glad I am living up to the lineage that Rob has established. So thank you so much for that. Mike, thank you for all the work that you do on Retro Encounter and for once again joining us on the podcast.
Oh, anytime. I had a great time talking about, how Spider-Man is the RPG of the future.
It's going to be the RPG of 2020. Just watch.
Right? And how thirsty Rob is. And Jono, as always, thank you for being just a great co-host and being so knowledgeable and great with discussion. I appreciate you, my good man.
Always my pleasure.
And listeners, again, thank you so much. Till next time, bye now.
Be seeing you.
Bye.
Cool. I'm going to clap in. That's me. Jono.
Okay, here I am.
Mike.
1, 2, 3, clap.
Hey, we all got the clap.
Cool.
Now we got to get ourselves checked.
There we go. All right, let's do this.